Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott, and we have an amazing show for you tonight. How about former President Richard Nixon and his best friend Jackie Gleason talking about aliens and UFOs and their sightings? Author Paul Blake Smith breaks it all down for us in just a few minutes' time. Dirty Filth is here with another amazing cartoon, and we're glad to say hello to each and every one of you. We got Race Fan in the gold medal position, the lovely and talented Kira with a silver, Laura Lobbs bringing it home with a bronze medal tonight, Chris 716, Sensational Sherry. Gong Show is back. Where you been, Gong Show? Good to have you here. And by the way, Gong Show will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. Kevin and Mama Susan, good to see you. Hello, D. Cohen, James Weston, and the lovely Samantha Hazelwood Gray. We love you too, my dear. Thank you for coming on in. We'll put her comment up there because it's just so nice. All right, Steve Weston, how you doing? Dutch Hank, Jessica Tim Mothman and his great goatee. Peter Thorgerson, how are you, my man? Good to have you all here. Let's go see D. Cypher. There he is. And who else do we got here? We have Les Paul Holland strumming away on the guitar. Yep, there he is. Okay, moving on. Scrolling on down in our chat room, we have the other side. We have Lisa C. We have Pixie Lara and Brown Dwarf. Nice to have you all here. Thank you for joining us. And let's continue on with our roll call. Paulie, are you sure? Great name. Welcome to SOR Chat. And Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. Moving on, we got Sandra Kincaid, Gizmo, Marty Burback. Thank you all for coming on in. My fellow Canadian, Millennium, my man, W. David Page, just another guy named Harry Tokeland. How y'all doing? Thank you for joining us. Area 51, and from Stockholm, Sweden, starting at left wing tonight at 6'5", 215 pounds, Lars Janssen. There he is. Steel City Coach, welcome to SOR Chat. Nice CFL logo. Let's go Lions. Yeah. Stargazer, how are you? Thank you for coming on in. Linda B., welcome to SOR Chat. Jeff Steve Garvey, he'll hit a home run for you. Alien Universe, Vash the Impaler, super crazy. And Cedric, how you all doing? Thank you for joining us. Okay, Mr. Eon, voice of the gods, good morning to you. Nina Williams, thank you for coming on in. Hi, Larry Fisher. How you doing? Candy Wolf and Rain, good to see you. Debster, thank you so much for kicking off the Super Chat tonight. The Super Chat is a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis, so thank you for your love of this show. Pink Volo, Into the Night, Bigfoot at Paranormal Talk Radio. Welcome to SOR Chat. And let's continue on here. Let's say hi to Ozzy Sue and Ozzy. How you doing? And Vanessa, thank you for coming on in. Bigfoot Rob, good to have you on this show as a guest on Monday. And Android Paranormal, Bryson's Folly, good to see you all. Thank you for joining us. Sweet Donna Spencer, thank you for coming on in. And Larry Fisher, thank you for that great super chat, my man. Very much appreciate the love. Larry, thank you so much. As we continue on with roll call, we got to start the radio side. So that way we can let Bill WD40 into the chat room to lube us up for tonight's show. You always want to go into a show nice and smooth. Skip to my Lou, Friends with Monsters. How you doing? Paula Fost, welcome to SOR Chat. And Nick Adkins, good to see you. Christine Lynn, thank you for joining us. Trot Dog, good to have you back. Lone Star Gemini, welcome to SOR Chat. And let's see, who else do we have here? Let's say hello to Anna Boine. How are you? Good to see you. Digger Dog, thanks for coming on in. We are running out of time. Hi, Aunt Edna. Thank you for joining us. And Raymond L., good to see you. Pammy Smith, you're early tonight. Good to have that. Lee the Bee, thank you for joining us. And 10 seconds left. Can we do it? Darth Maylock, welcome to SOR Chat. We are ready. Our store is open on our website, spacedoutradio.com. If you're new here, hit subscribe, ring that bell, horns up. Let's rock. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We got a power show of strangeness tonight. How about Jackie Gleason and Richard Nixon meeting up to meet UFOs and aliens? Author Paul Blake Smith will be with us momentarily. Then in hour number 3, we got a great story from Steve Stockton from Among the Missing, the YouTube channel. And then little Timmy Senor, our resident Timbit, will be here for the UFO Report. Paul Blake Smith is the author of MO41, the Bombshell Before Roswell. He was born and raised in MO41's hometown of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Son of a paralegal and an educator who worked in the suspected crash area, Paul is a fan of American history and pop culture, living and working in a city in the western part of the Show Me State, writing original screenplays and other books on largely historical nonfiction subjects, including a follow-up to his original fact-based publication about a mass cover-up by the U.S. government. But tonight, we're talking about a great book that he has out. It's called The Nixon Gleason Alien Encounter, an investigation into Nixon's secret air-base meetings to view extraterrestrials. We've heard the story before, but never in detail like this. Let us say hello to Paul Blake Smith. Thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio for the first time. Paul, welcome.
Thanks for having me on, Mr. Scott. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here, too. You know, out of all the topics, I was looking through your Amazon, and man, you got some incredible books out there regarding the UFO subject. MO41, the Bombshell Before Roswell, President Eisenhower's Close Encounters. We're going to try and get to a little bit of that tonight. JFK and the Willard Hotel plot. I mean, there's a lot going on here regarding UFOs and conspiracy. You know, was it just fascination that led you down these topics?
Right. I write about things that interest me, and I think they interest most folks. The Kennedy assassination, and are we alone in the universe? Are we being visited? And this story popped up in my own hometown. And while I was doing research, I was reminded of the Eisenhower story. And I thought, you know, where is a book on this? An entire book. I want to know everything. And so I got tired of waiting. And I wrote it myself after years of research. And the same thing for the Nixon Gleason story. There's not a single book out on this, and yet you see it on websites and mentioned here and there in a chapter of UFO publications. And does anyone want to take an in-depth look at this and see, is this real or not? So that's how we got to this point tonight, Dave.
Well, I'm glad you did, because this is one of those subjects. I've been doing this show for over 8.5 years, coming up 9 years in November. And I've heard this story so many times that I am just pumped up to finally get this topic going. And we're going to get into a lot of it at the bottom of the hour here. But first, I want to know, like, when you are digging into a story that is an alleged rumor, how do you research it? How do you go for the jugular to try and find that enough information to put it all in one book?
Yeah. The Cape Girardeau story was over 80 years old. The Eisenhower story was over 70 years old. And now the Nixon encounter was over 50 years old. Almost everyone is gone. In the Cape Girardeau story, almost everyone, I think everyone from 1941 is gone. And in many cases, their children are gone. They've left this world, and they were warned not to talk. So that made it especially tough to research. But in the Nixon case, I did get to talk to one of Nixon's aides who was on his trip to Key Biscayne, Florida, where he went on the helicopter ride to Jackie Gleason's golf tournament that day. And he told me with a chuckle, he said, I thought this was going to be history in the making. We were going to see Jackie Gleason beheaded on live national television. Gleason rolled up to the helicopter in a golf cart and rushed right over to the chopper while the blades were whirring. And it's a good thing Jackie was actually kind of a short fellow. He didn't get his head lopped off in front of the TV cameras. This was a celebrity golf tournament, and it was being carried by CBS. That very afternoon, around noon, Richard Nixon showed up in Marine One, his preferred mode of transportation in 1973. And he did speak to Jackie. The two of them puttered around in this golf cart and then got out and talked to the media in front of microphones. So there's absolute proof that they were together on that particular day. And it's confirmed within Nixon's presidential records. That you can look at. They're digitized. You can look them up online. And what a coincidence. It says a page has been removed from this file when you get up to 8:30 that night of the alleged encounter. You don't get to see the Nixon records for what he did for the rest of the evening until the next morning when he shows up for breakfast at his Key Biscayne, Florida beachfront home. So that's where we can put this together with an actual serious allegation that was repeated by Jackie's wife, and the records at the time, and some amount of media coverage here and there, and use some facts instead of wild made-up stories. And there's been a little of that polluting the Gleason-Nixon affair. And I try to set the story straight with nonfiction seriousness, even though it's a wild sounding tale in my book.
As you were researching this, or even before, did you think it was real? Did you think there was truth to it, or did you think it was a rumor at the time?
Yeah, it rang true to me when I first read it. Beverly Gleason gave the story in 1974. She repeated it in 1983. And Jackie died in 1987 and refused to deny the story. He could have easily knocked this thing down and said, this is nonsense. I don't want to hear this. This never happened. But he refused to say so. According to a recent article that came out after my book was released, Jackie told friends in private, Nixon showed me the proof. He said, I don't want to talk about it, but Nixon showed me. And that's all he was willing to say. But for the public, he wouldn't comment whatsoever. It was Beverly Gleason's prerogative to give an interview in 2003, her third interview on this case, and she did not retract the story. She didn't change it. She didn't make herself be the big hero, to just louse it up and somehow be self-aggrandizing or anything. She just told the facts, and I think even though I believe she's still alive, I could not find her. She hasn't never changed the story. She's never written a tell-all book, here's what Jackie was doing in private during all those years. She really clammed up, and she doesn't really want to talk about it. I think the fact is she's told everything she knows, and there's really nothing else left.
Okay, so getting to you here, Paul, before you started getting into all of these amazing stories regarding UFOs that for many of us have only been rumor and conjecture, how did you get into this subject? What intrigued you about UFOs? You've never seen a UFO.
Right.
Was it just too much Star Trek as a kid, or was it, or
I
what
like
was
a little Star Trek and some Star Wars, but I'm not a huge sci-fi person. And I've never seen, as you say, a UFO or an alien or anything like that. I found it of fascination. But, I think there's something deep within inside almost every person at some point in your life. What is the point of our existence? Are we alone in the universe? Are we being visited? Are all these UFO stories, of them, some of them true? Could we be monitored by creatures from another world? As scientists really speculate now that there are other life forms on other planets. They could be very human-like on planets that are very Earth-like in the incredibly vast cosmos. It's hard to come to the conclusion now that, we're the only life forms in all of the galaxies and all the world. It just stands to reason logically, like Mr. Spock would say, it is highly illogical to think that we're alone, that there are various other creatures at various stages. I believe that some may be amoeba forms, or some may be in primate forms as we know it here on Earth, and some may be in early advanced human state, and others may be so far advanced we can barely conceive of their existence. So I find it logical to believe we are being visited by a few curious races. I've read many times where there are people associated with government that feel that it might be up to even a dozen races are able to come here and poke around and not get too involved. Again, I hate to keep bringing up Star Trek, but they have the prime directive: observe, but do not get involved in an alien culture. And naturally, they violated that prime directive each week on the show and got involved with the alien worlds that they were visiting. But I don't know how much involvement there is, but I think beings from other worlds are visiting and monitoring our progress and the deterioration of our atmosphere since the Industrial Revolution, and the pollution we're putting in our skies and our land and our seas. And most of all, from the Eisenhower story, is they allegedly claimed that they're deeply concerned with our nuclear bomb testing program, sending contamination into not only our atmosphere, but into outer space. And they asked President Eisenhower, could you please stop these test detonations? And he supposedly told them, I'm not going to disarm unilaterally. I have to see other nations also agree to a test ban treaty, which finally came about just after Eisenhower's term, when President Kennedy got a number of nations on board to sign that historic agreement, which still holds to this day.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. Now, are you kind of jealous out of everything you've written about UFOs that you haven't seen one yet?
Yeah. Well, where's mine? When do I get to see one? But as I was telling you before the program started, I don't really recommend a writer's life. It's a little isolating, a little lonely. You have to close yourself off, turn off TVs and music so you can concentrate. You have to read books, magazines, newspaper articles, websites, and then you have to get the best facts, what you feel is the most valid allegations and stories, and look things up and double check, and use a lot of search engines, and get the information in a cogent form, and write and rewrite and edit and proofread. And that's just to finish the book. And then after it comes out, you have to be your own social media director and do a lot of advertising and promoting and going on shows like this one. So it's not a fun, exciting life. And therefore, I don't have my head out the door enough, just a little these days, to see something from another world. And they haven't visited me in my bedroom. So we're at loggerheads with that issue.
Well, you know what? Sometimes you don't want those visitations
Yes, that's
in the
right.
middle
Yeah.
of the night, especially if you look up Whitley Strieber. But I mean, the idea, though, that these aliens aren't supposed to exist, they're supposed to be figments of our imagination. And now, with the government coming out saying that they are looking into UFOs and potential extraterrestrials, and whistleblowers coming out saying we have the bodies of the pilots, we have the craft, some of them are intact. I mean, this is getting all too real for someone who's supposed to be a sci-fi writer like yourself.
Yeah. It is getting more attention, and that's great. But did people listen to Phil Corso, who was a respected military colonel in his day when he released in 1997, I think it was, the day after Roswell? Did they listen to Bob Lazar, a respected scientist, when he said, "We've got them"? He came forward in late 1988 or 89. And these aren't the first whistleblowers. The media in general tends to ridicule or dismiss this. And it's kind of sad because there are voices that have been trying to speak out and say the government knows full well that we're being visited. They've got the evidence and they've got the proof locked up, and they're examining what they have and trying to replicate it or reverse engineer to get the power source and apply it to weapons in our defense industry. And that requires a great deal of top secret classifications. Therefore, you're not allowed to learn about this. And it's sad because we live in a representational government of democracy for everyone. And we send our representatives to Washington to tell us what's going on. And we're supposed to be informed. But the military and Central Intelligence, National Security Agency, Department of Defense, they have effectively clamped down on this issue for many years. And I don't know what's coming now in the future, but we have had whistleblowers like David Grush come forward. And I'm pleased to see that. However, David Grush admits, I don't have any film footage for you. I don't have a file or a copy of a report. And I've never seen these things either. I was just told while I was on the job for the government, and he's got excellent credentials, that this is what we've got. Well, I've been reading that for years. That's nothing new to me. That especially at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, we've got a repository of alien craft and bodies, and where ultimately the Cape Girardeau discoveries may have been taken and greatly examined. And from paperwork, I understand there's another air base called Homestead Air Force Base that also had bodies being examined. I did one show recently where the host said, yeah, I've got a source that has described Homestead in South Florida as a site where bodies and craft were being examined. Well, that fits what we're going to talk about tonight. Jackie Gleason was almost entirely Miami bound. He preferred to live there and he didn't like to travel. He didn't drive a car. He hated air travel. If he had to go somewhere, he might take off in a train. He had a chauffeur take him around town. But that's how he could have been in place for Richard Nixon to have shown him what was at Homestead Air Force Base.
Why do you think these celebrities get these opportunities? I mean, we've seen, the whole Jackie Gleason issue. We've seen other celebrities go on television shows or like visit places like Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, there just seems to be an affinity with sharing these stories with celebrities. Why do you think that is?
Fame and fortune get you a lot of places in this country, especially a fortune. Politicians are always looking for donations to their campaigns. In the early 1973 era, where my story is set, Nixon was desperate for cash. He needed it to silence his Watergate burglars who got caught in the Watergate office building Democratic headquarters in 1972, and they were threatening to talk. He said on tape, in the White House tapes, he was bugging himself, that he needed at least $1 million hush money to keep the burglars and their lawyers quiet. to maintain Nixon's sterling reputation as a president of law and order, which turned out to be quite a joke. So Nixon needed cash. Jackie Gleason was one of the wealthiest men in show business. At one point, he was making $14 million per year from his TV, The Honeymooners, residuals, and his movies, his record albums, his personal appearances. He had an enormous fortune and was quite willing to spend it. So in the 60s, when he started to befriend Richard Nixon, they went golfing together after Nixon lost the 1960 election to JFK. Nixon kept showing up in South Florida to golf with a fellow conservative who was his political supporter and also financially. Jackie was convinced Nixon was the one and helped fund Nixon's campaign in 68 and even held a special program on the eve of the election to promote Richard Nixon as the man we need for president. He was a big financial and emotional supporter of Richard Nixon. Well before, about 5 years before the encounter at Homestead Air Force Base. So Jackie had a lot of money. Nixon needed money. They shared the same lawyer who was arrested and charged for handing out large sums of cash, obstructing justice in the Watergate case. Herb Kalmbach was his name, and he was the bag man. And Jackie had used him before. And Nixon was Kalmbach's personal legal representative, and he was caught with the money. So I think we can put two and two together. Jackie desperately wanted proof of alien visitation. He talked about it on the airwaves, on the Long John Naval radio show in New York City. And at first he offered $50,000. Then he pumped it up to $500,000. And by the early 70s, he said, I'll give $1 million to any man who will show me hard proof of alien visitation. So now we have Nixon's motivation for going to an Air Force base and meeting Jackie Gleason there and showing him the goods. Nixon needed the money. Gleason was obsessed with UFOs and willing to freely spend his dough. And he already financially supported Nixon and loved the guy. So we can see how this would come about.
We got 2 minutes to go, about 90 seconds to go here. Why was Jackie Gleason so addicted to this topic?
That's a good question. I really can't answer, but as of 54, he was so obsessed, he began planning, custom building his own UFO house in New York, which we can talk about after the break. And when it was finished 5 years later, cost a small fortune. It is said that one of his first guests was Richard Nixon, and they called it the UFO house. And it's still there to this day in Peekskill, New York, not too far from the edge of a bluff, where you could look out these huge bay windows and feel like you're riding in a spaceship. That's how obsessed Jackie Gleason was with this subject.
Do you think he was taken? Do you think he had a close encounter, and this is why?
Jackie told TV Guide magazine in the 1950s he had never seen a UFO. And by the early 70s, he changed his story, or at least said, now I've seen a couple while walking on a beach in Miami. I don't know if he was taken, how close he was to these craft. But one thing was for sure, according to biographers, and I found it to be true, Jackie was not a liar. He didn't make up stories for attention. He had an outsized personality that naturally drew attention. He didn't need to exaggerate, distort, or make up a bunch of nonsense. He wanted the facts and everything. And he was even a little cynical about some UFO stories. He was not a great believer in everything he heard. So I find it very difficult to believe that he would make up the encounter with Nixon or that he saw some UFOs from a beach in Miami. Whether he was ever abducted, I have no idea.
All right. Paul Blake Smith, author of this amazing book called The Nixon Gleason Alien Encounter, an investigation into Nixon's secret airbase meetings to view extraterrestrials. It's on Amazon, along with some other really crazy books that he has out there. You want to check it on out. We're going to continue on learning about Jackie Gleason's obsession with UFOs and Richard Nixon's trip to Florida. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. Hot damn, I could listen to you talk about this for a long time. This is I'm just like, woo, this is what we want, man.
Well, I hope I don't talk too much, but there's lots of facts to get to. And yet at the same time, I don't want to say too much. Then you won't go out and buy the book. He told us everything.
I will tell you this. The more you tell, the more chances from my audience you have on selling the book. So that's just the way they do it.
Well, that would be the ultimate goal of every writer. You don't get too much reward in life, but if you get good reviews on Amazon and some sales and some attention in that manner, it feels more worthwhile. I don't do it because I need to appear on camera. I don't like talking about myself because I have such a boring life, but I will be happy to talk about these subjects in the books.
Let's do it. Let's do it as we continue on. How you doing down there, Dirty Filth?
I'm trying to make out his drawing there. What that's going to be. It looks like a circular craft with 2 occupants.
Yeah, we got a couple. I'm drawing the Turkish UFO from 2000.
Oh yeah, that's a cool case too.
Just little alien there waving. Can't really see him too well right now, but yeah, there he is.
W. Decker's going to get your book. He's liking it. I know we have a lot of new listeners in our chat room tonight. Thank you so much. Please do us a favor. Hit subscribe. Ring that bell if you haven't already, because we are on here 7 days a week for your listening entertainment. I want to just make sure you understand how we work. We are different than most YouTube channels. We are a combination of a live radio show with a live podcast and the live YouTube and Twitch. And so we have to take commercial breaks every half an hour to line up with our radio side of things. So that's kind of the reason why we work it a little bit differently, but you get to get the behind the scenes stuff like us hanging out right now, chatting with you. And I hope you enjoy and continue on to enjoy more SOR and check out our archives as well. Cause we got, I don't know, something like 1,600 shows in the bank here. So check it on out. And so thank you all, especially the new people, for coming on in and hanging out with us. And don't forget to give us a thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways, whatever you feel we deserve. And after the show, leave a comment if you don't mind. It helps with the algorithms. It makes this channel bloom like a beautiful flower that it is. Got to paint that picture. You know how it goes. All right.
There will always be skeptics, but I find that Turkish video very fascinating and almost chilling. It really does look like there's some greenish, big-headed aliens sitting in the like flight deck or cockpit with a window of a circular or maybe a boomerang-shaped craft or something.
Here, let's get a closer look here.
I decided to go with the typical gray alien.
Oh yeah. Giving a little wave there. The moon looks like some nice Swiss cheese tonight.
Apparently, good Swiss cheese has less holes. It's my second favorite cheese.
Your first favorite cheese?
Feta.
See, I love the feta. I do love the feta. But Swiss is number 1 for me. Smoked Gouda would be a number 2. And a feta, I would say, is probably a number 3.
That's a good choice.
Mm-hmm. 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 Looking good, Dirty.
Thanks, Dave.
You painted that fast, man. You're already on the outlining of everything.
I know. I don't know how it happens. I've just been. I can have to draw like draw 2 cartoons a night since pretty soon here.
I know. Are you prepping for Reno already?
Oh yeah, I still got about 1 million drawings to bring there.
Yeah, that'll be happening in 2024. We're just going to be locking down the dates here soon for the 3rd annual SOR fan party. Filth, Bryson Folly is asking, where's the Space Kitties?
Whiskey's grumping. Blob wants up. Come on, Blob.
We're going to have a blob alert. Blob alert. There's Blob.
There's the Blob. Hello, Blob.
There's Blob. All right, we got 10 seconds to go here. Big thank you to Deb, Larry, W. Decker ×2, and Izzy for the super chats. Here we go with the next half hour, everybody. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. We're glad to have you with us. So please, if you haven't already, just continue to turn this in each and every night because we put in a lot of work to bring this heavy quality woo to you. Reminder to all of you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram, at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Here we go with author Paul Blake Smith. We are talking about his great book, The Nixon Gleason Alien Encounter, an investigation into Nixon's secret airbase meetings to view extraterrestrials. It can be found on Amazon, so we want all of you to go add it to your collection tonight. Paul, thank you so much for being here. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me on. I hope the story's taking shape as well as the artwork is tonight.
All right. Right before the break, we were talking about the idea of Jackie Gleason's addiction to this subject. Nobody knows if he was an experiencer or not. He was very vague and quiet about this topic. What about Richard Nixon? I mean, most presidents, when they get in there, it's always said one of the first three questions they ask the minute they enter the White House was about aliens and UFOs.
Yeah.
Okay, was he the same, or did he have any idea this existed until it was brought to him?
Since he worked for Dwight Eisenhower for 8 long years in the 1950s, I'm pretty sure Mr. Nixon was up to code on what we had gathered from our intelligence services on extraterrestrial visitation. I referred to Linda Moulton Howe, who did an interview with a source that gave his name anonymously as Cooper Stein. And Mr. Stein had good credentials, worked with the CIA, worked with military intelligence, said that he personally briefed President Eisenhower and Richard Nixon in the late 50s. I don't think he gave a specific year, about the progress of extraterrestrial contact going on in Nevada. And that he said Eisenhower asked some calm, clear questions about it, but Nixon sat at the briefing a bit aghast. Apparently he was not well informed up to that point, that he must have been a bit overwhelmed that the aliens. So I think he was filled in the time to come because Eisenhower realized he was the standard bearer for the party as vice president. He was going to be the nominee in 1960, and he was. So he had to be kept fully briefed on what was going on, contact, such as the Eisenhower encounter in Palm Springs and Edwards Air Force Base in February of 1954. That was on the February 19th date. Let's keep that one in mind as we flash forward up to Nixon's presidency, in which he undertook a little trip to Homestead Air Force Base on February 19th, 1973, and invited his golfing buddy with over $1 million to throw around, Jackie Gleason.
Oh, wow. Wow. I didn't know, being Canadian, I didn't know the tie-in between Nixon and Eisenhower. And trust me, you and I are going to get into that Eisenhower story. Maybe tonight, if not very, very soon on this show, because I need that story again. I do. I really do. But I want to ask you, in regards to this scenario, let's start to play it out here. So, how does this come together? Jackie Gleason was allegedly having, or apparently having, a charity golf tournament. And how did it go from there? How did this all come together?
Right. Jackie was hosting his annual Inverrary Celebrity Golf Tournament from Lauderhill, Florida, which was a suburb of Miami. He had a golf course home there on the 18th green, and it wasn't far at all from a chopper pad where celebrities could helicopter in and out and play on the golf course without even taking a limo in and out the front entrance. Nixon used that chopper pad that very afternoon of Monday, February 19th, 1973, at this CBS televised golf tournament. Joe DiMaggio and many former Yankees were there. Many members of the champion Miami Dolphins were there, and celebrities like Jack Carter and Maury Amsterdam and some other comedians of the time, Jackie's old comedy cronies, including Bob Hope. Hope was a close friend of Jackie Gleason's, and they partnered all the time in golf and would wager considerable amounts of money since they were both incredibly wealthy, politically conservative, and huge Nixon supporters. So Bob Hope was there that day when Nixon landed in his helicopter and spoke to the press and announced a big donation for the Boys and Girls Club of America, and took some questions from the media as they stopped the golf tournament and everyone gathered around to watch. And Jackie chimed in with a few remarks. And then they got back in their golf cart and went back to the chopper pad. Nixon got back in Marine One, his favorite helicopter, and took off. So Jackie spent the rest of that afternoon golfing and schmoozing with celebrities. And then he went back to his house right nearby and relaxed and lost sort of contact with his wife, Beverly, his second wife at the time. And she said he did not come back until close to midnight. And that key part of the story, she said he was ashen face. He was haggard. He was deeply rattled and came in the front door with his key and slumped into an armchair in the living room. And he looked awful. And she said, "Where have you been? What's going on?" And he said, "I've just been in an Air Force base, and Richard Nixon showed me the proof at last. He showed me that we've got alien bodies." And she was, "What?" And, she had to have been a bit flabbergasted, but she did mention in her interviews that she did give over the years that she had met Richard Nixon at least one time before. They hung out in the back patio of their golf course home in Miami and had drinks together and chatted with Jackie and some other guests. So she was not completely flabbergasted that Jackie had been with Nixon that night, especially after Nixon visited with Jackie at noon that afternoon. So she asked, "What are you talking about?" And he said what happened to him. In legal cases, we call that an excited utterance. That's lawyer talk. For you blurt out the truth when you're emotionally shaken up by something that's just happened, and that it can be used as an admission in a court of law in many cases. So he said, "I was taken by Nixon to Homestead Air Force Base, which is about 30 miles south of Miami." And he didn't say how he got there, but we can easily tell that Nixon must have sent his chopper back to the chopper pad. Gleason walked out there, a short walk, got in and was flown. Took about 20 minutes to get to Homestead. He said there, Nixon greeted me with armed security guards around them and took them to an isolated remote part of the base to a kind of laboratory. And once there was an armed guard at the door to this lab, Jackie remembered to his wife. And we went in and Nixon showed me what they were hiding, and that caused him to be so upset, so emotionally rattled that he blurted this out at close to midnight when he got home. Again, he probably took a helicopter ride from the base back to the chopper pad right behind his home and walked right up to the front door And that's why the Nixon Presidential Library removed that document, that we can't tell if Nixon did order his chopper and went out on a little excursion that night. They deliberately removed that file for reasons of national security, as they often say. So we have to rely on Beverly Gleason's 3 different stories of what happened. And she said Jackie told her that they went into this lab and saw 4 different small alien bodies. They were dead. They were laying out on 4 examining tables. And Jackie made the comment that they must be either embalmed or getting ready for embalmed, because they must have been in a crash or something nearby, which is a bit faulty reasoning. They could have been in a crash anywhere and transported to Homestead Air Force Base. But Jackie said that at the time. And she said, what did the aliens look like? And he told her that they were kind of dwarfish looking, maybe 2 or 2.5 feet tall, big pointy ears, big bug eyes, and not of great substance. They weren't stocky. They happened to match the great Hopkinsville alien encounter of 1955. I'm sure many of your followers on this program are familiar with the Sutton family of Hopkinsville, Kentucky, who lived on a farm out in the countryside, said they were under attack by these dwarfish little aliens that were about 2.5 feet tall with big pointy ears and big bug eyes. And then they apparently got through messing with them, got back in their craft and flew off. And a few people said they saw a disc coming down before the encounter and then flying off sometime afterwards. So that may have been the same race that possibly had an accident. Jackie did not describe any injuries, at least according to Beverly's memory. We're counting on Bev's memory, and we're counting on Jackie to have told her every detail. And now I don't think he did, because there's still another detail to come that does not come from Beverly Gleason. I wonder if Dave would like to hear that.
I'm going to tell you right now, I don't even want to talk during this episode. I just want to break this all down.
There was a website for MeTV, of all places. MeTV online did a quick review of the Nixon-Gleason alien encounter some years ago. And they had a comment section after it. This is because The Honeymooners, to this day, runs on MeTV at about 11 o'clock Central Time here in America. So one person wrote in by the name of Frank Noon. And of course, anyone can write anything on the internet. You never know. But this guy had an interesting level of detail on the encounter, almost as if he was there that night. He said, first, Mr. Nixon did not stop at the bodies. He took Jackie over to an airplane hangar, a jet hangar on the base, and they went inside and saw a spaceship that was being held there and literally had to be held down by cables attached to the floor because it was up in the air. It was activated or alive, you might say. Your typical silver round disc that was possibly from the aliens that he saw in the examination lab on these examining tables. Apparently, Nixon didn't tell him a whole lot, but showed him these things. And the Frank Noon source on MeTV's site said that the hangar is even visible as you drive by on the highway, that you can see this hangar. Now, how would he know these things? And, unless he was there, I suppose he could be making it up, but it sounds like something that could have happened. There's another source that Jackie said he also did see a spaceship that was in a hangar at the base, and it was silver and metal, and that it convinced him that this is the real deal, not an American reverse engineered craft or something that they rigged up to trick him with. So there's that information. And there might have been even more going on at the base, because let's remember that February 19th date. It was February 19th that Eisenhower supposedly met with human-like aliens in Edwards Air Force Base out in the secure Mojave Desert. and that they reached an agreement. And while putting into a Google search engine, I researched this agreement. And I couldn't get much on it, but it did say it was a 10-year agreement. I thought, well, that's odd. So I looked into presidential records, and guess what? Lyndon Johnson was president 10 years after the Eisenhower encounter, called him up on February 19th, then hopped aboard a plane and flew all the way to Palm Springs and met with him in private. And over the next couple of days, there are gaps in the Eisenhower and Johnson schedules that they could have been up to something, possibly forging another extension of this human alien agreement, that they're going to stay at arm's length. That was Eisenhower's main concern. Don't sit down in a major city and step out and start talking to people. Don't trigger a panic. Don't upset our social order or our economic system that we have. We don't need another stock market crash like 1929. So if that was extended another 10 years by Johnson, which is merely speculative on my part, but it seems reasonable, on February 19th, Nixon needed to be at that Air Force base anyway to attend to possibly renewing or changing that document or superseding the Eisenhower agreement. And in February of 74, I looked it up, and Nixon also went to Key Biscayne, Florida. And very strangely, documents were removed from that file, and other files were not kept. Very weird in Nixon's files, I found that his visit in February of 74 was not recorded well, like an occasional phone call. Otherwise, he was instructing his secretary, don't write this down. Unlike all the rest of his meticulous records, Jackie was not listed, but so much of what Nixon did in February of 74 was not listed. So Jackie could have been a part of that, but let's focus on 73. That was the 19th anniversary of the Eisenhower encounter. And since my book came out, I was contacted by a very serious source, a researcher. He said, I didn't know whether to believe your Eisenhower story or your Nixon story. So I checked with my military intelligence contacts, and I've got some friends in the media. They're higher than my contacts, I can say that. And he said, they came back and said the whole thing is true, that Paul Blake Smith is onto something, that Eisenhower did meet on February 19th, 54, forged an agreement, and that Nixon forged an even greater agreement, more substantial, with his presidency kind of outdoing his boss, who died in the first month of the Nixon administration in March of 1969. So I believe my source, not because he's telling me what I want to hear, but because he's been a pretty serious guy and has fed me some pretty good information. And he admits he was skeptical of the two stories, and now he is a believer.
Paul Blake Smith is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio, talking about the Nixon Gleason UFO encounter. I'm stunned right now because the detail that you have regarding this case and everything. One of the things that I have heard through the rumor mill is that after Jackie Gleason viewed the bodies and after he viewed the UFO, from what I had heard, and I'm curious how true it is, but the rumor goes that he lost a lot of his funniness after that. And he lost a lot of his natural humor. He became desolate. He became a little bit aloof to what life was all about after that. Can you either approve that, or can you redefine what I was just saying?
Yeah, that's very much what Beverly Gleason has told repeatedly, that Jackie would have wild mood swings in that night and in the days, if not weeks to come, that he would be giddy with excitement, that he alone of all citizens, private citizens, got to see the proof at last. And he felt pretty special and pretty important. He got the proof that he had wanted his whole life. He collected over 1,700 books and periodicals on UFOs and the paranormal. And he finally got the truth at, I think he was 63 years old. And then she said his mood would swing back another way. He was becoming furious over and over that the government has the darn proof. They're hiding it. They won't tell us about it. They're our government. And he says they know we're being visited. They're examining the the recoveries and the craft, and they're talking to people from other worlds, and they're not sharing this, and they're making people who do come forward and say they've seen this look like idiots. And Jackie thundered one way or the other for weeks, and he could not work. He went years without making a movie. He did a little television work in 73, much later in the year. Not much after that. He drank and smoked normally, but he apparently stepped up those two favorite hobbies. Wasn't good for him, but he was so shook up and so emotionally riding a roller coaster in the weeks, maybe months afterwards, that it gives you some, I hate to say it, but it gives you some sympathy for the government keeping this a secret. If someone who was obsessed with UFOs and ETs could barely handle this emotionally, how about the rest of the country in 1973? How would they react emotionally or psychologically? Would they kind of freak out or go into an emotional roller coaster ride? Jackie was braced up for the truth, and yet it still deeply affected him. And remember, she said he came home that night, haggard and pale. His face was drawn, and it was just astonishing and frightening for her that he must have seen something even more astounding than 4 dead bodies, which I'm sure he leaned in and examined closely, but probably was not allowed to touch. And this spacecraft probably likewise. And now in my book, I give a document from January 1989, a briefing document from the Defense Intelligence Agency, in which it says something really astounding. And even I was taken aback by it. And it said this program occurred in the early 1970s, the Nixon era, about what was going on at some American air bases in private and great secrecy. I wonder if Dave Scott would like to hear about that.
In 2 minutes, I would love to hear it. We got 2 minutes before we got to go to break, and if we got to carry it over, we could definitely do that.
Very well, sir.
Go for it.
In 2 minutes, diplomatic exchanges between UFO occupants who stepped out and American servicemen who stepped into the craft and went on little rides into space. The aliens spoke English and came out and talked to members of the air base, the top intelligence personnel, and probably an airbase office. They exchanged information. And then the spaceship would land and disgorge the intelligence officers, and they would write up reports about their experience and what they learned. It's pretty mind-numbing. Diplomatic exchanges between humans and aliens at select Air Force bases during the Nixon years.
Okay, where was these happening?
Probably the key one was out in the Nevada desert, but I suspect that Nixon was monitoring this and had a little bit going on, speculation on my part, I admit, at Homestead Air Force Base, which was surrounded by a farm field and ocean. It was right there on the Atlantic Ocean. So you could have gotten away with a lot of landings and takeoffs without anyone knowing in the middle of the night.
So you're getting really into Project Serpo.
That's something I researched and looked into and put it into my book. And it is a fascinating tale that confirms that diplomatic exchanges were going on.
What is interesting about this is the timelines. Is everything seems to revolve around Eisenhower. Everything seems to revolve around Nixon regarding this. Did it get too close? Did Nixon get too close near the end? And that's why we've kind of seen a silence over the years up until recently about this?
It's possible. It does say that diplomatic exchanges resulted in volumes of fascinating files, but that it was ended at some point. And it may have ended when Nixon left office, and they may have closed it up at that point. Why, I don't know, but Nixon would go to Key Biscayne and hang out at his beachfront home over 50 times, using Homestead Air Force Base as his main Air Force One landing site.
Paul, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. We're going to go to break here on Spaced Out Radio. Paul Blake Smith, author of the Nixon Gleason Alien Encounter. You can find the book on Amazon right now. Spaced Out Radio, Hour 2 is next with this fascinating topic. There we go, my man. We got about a 5-minute break here. And Paul W. Decker in our chat room has now ordered 2 of your books.
Well, let's make that 200 books. Well, I appreciate that, Dave. I hope you enjoy them. I tried to make them very serious and cram as much information in them as I possibly could.
Good. I'm going to disappear here for a minute. I'm going to put you back in the green room. And Baba 200, thank you. Along with W. Decker again. And we're going to just take a quick break here, guys. Good time for a bathroom break for all of us here. So we'll be right back, guys. Going to pass you all over to the man, the myth, and the legend, Dirty Filth. And he'll take over. Dirty, it's all on you,
Dave.
man.
All right. I have arrived. Don't worry, Dave. I promise I won't swear. So we got our... Oh, yes. By the way, if you go to filthy.com, that's FYLTHY.com, you can scoop my book. You can send me an email. I would say buy a calendar, but it's a little bit late in the year. And buy a book for your mom too. Tell her you love her. Anyways, we got our Turkish UFO here. He's waving at all the humans. Yeah, I can't really say. It's an airport, Jeremy Jones. It's terrible. Just avoid them as best as you can. See, if we could just have aliens teach us a teleport device of some sort. Thanks, Izzy Beth. Then I wouldn't have to sweat when I take a plane and panic, and I don't like flying at all. And then you wouldn't have to deal with any cabbies that are there, cartoons. Thank you, Toe Tag. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the kind words. How is whiskey? Let me just turn my head and have a look here, love. Her and Blobber staring out the window. Look at that. Legendary Black Dragon. Hi, Black Dragon. I haven't seen you for a long time. It's good to see you, buddy. President Zaddy. Hi. I don't know if I could be on a train. I just don't like people. They're always loud. And they try to bug you when you're reading a book or something. I always have that problem at work. I'll be reading a book and then it comes up like, are you still reading that? It's like, no. But yes, Blob and Whiskey are, well, Blob's passed out and Whiskey is just enjoying herself. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, he's just chilling. Just stopped by to wave at some humans. I've sort of done a couple short little comics and junk. In my next book, I have a whole bunch of like 1.5 page comics. I actually have a really good one in there. It's Science Bob and Dave Scott and Brandon Fugel and Lou Elizondo on an adventure. They time travel basically, so it's pretty cool. I chuckled. Yes, Black Dragon. I can't believe Bob Birkins isn't here to stare at my lovely hands. I feel like I'm like a hand model or something now. People only love me for my hands. Oh, hey, Brown Dwarf. How's it going, buddy boy? And I seen that video you had on your TikTok thing, and I was kind of hoping to see a Sasquatch, but I didn't see a Sasquatch. I'm kind of upset about that. I'd probably get it done before November for sure, love. Ow. Oh, the cats are sharp. We'll still be here no matter what. Unless, of course, we all get abducted by aliens at the same time. Hi, Bomber. Well, I hope everybody's having a good night. I'm going to go jump in the chat room when Dave gets back here.
All right. I am back. Who do we have joining us here? Looking good, Dirty. Looking
Thanks, Dave.
good. Another great piece, my man.
Excellent. I'm going to go jump in the chat room.
Okay. Have a good night, buddy.
Have a good night, gentlemen.
That's our dirty filth right there. Creating another masterpiece. All right. I want to say a big thank you tonight to Vash the Impaler, Baba W. Decker ×2, Izzy Stradlin, and make that W. Decker ×3. Larry and Deb for the amazing super chats. Very much appreciate the love. It's a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. So thank you so much. And we're going to kick things off in another 20 seconds. Once again, if you're new here, do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Ring that bell. We'd really appreciate it. We work hard for you 7 days a week. And you can do your shopping. Grab some really cool swag at spacedoutradio.com. And, yeah, we're always here. We're always here. Hi, Juliana. How are you? Good to see you. And here we go, everybody.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Login. Login is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Author Paul Blake Smith is with us. We're talking about this incredible story that we've only heard rumors about, but he went in depth, created a book called The Nixon Gleason Alien Encounter, an investigation into Nixon's secret airbase meetings to view extraterrestrials. It can be found on Amazon right now as we speak, even tomorrow. If you want to wait a day, that's okay. Even tomorrow, you can pick it up for your library. Paul, thank you so much for being here. The pleasure is ours.
Thanks for having me on. We got another fun hour. I hope folks stick with us.
Oh, I'm pretty sure they're glued to us right now in regards to this amazing, incredible story about Jackie Gleason being introduced to a UFO and extraterrestrials at an Air Force base in Florida. You know, so much comes to mind. You know, we talked right before the break about how Gleason had become very depressed and almost a little bit manic on the topic after learning the truth that extraterrestrials were here. They were recovered by the United States military over the years. Was there any information ever given about where we got the craft from?
Yeah, Beverly did not say. First, she gave an interview in 1974 to a tabloid, and she said as soon as it came out, Jackie called her up and was furious and chewed her out and said, "Don't ever speak of this." So they split up and got a divorce. And in 1983, she thought, I think I'll write a tell-all book about Jackie. He was so remarkable, my ex-husband. And she decided, I'll write a full-page article for the National Enquirer about some of his peccadillos, including his great belief in reincarnation and how he could have dreams at night where he was reliving some of his past lives, and he would tell her about it. But the main passion that was astounding was this story that he gave one night in 73 about coming home from a air base in South Miami with Richard Nixon, having seen alien bodies. So she put that into the article, and Jackie read it again and exploded with rage and called her up and chewed her out and said, "You're never to talk about this again." And she quickly deep sixed the book idea. There's never been a book, a tell-all by Beverly McKittrick Gleason. She went on her way, and they found her in 2003, and she gave an interview to the late Kenny Young, who died of leukemia shortly thereafter. But he got an exclusive interview with Beverly, and she repeated all the facts, did not embellish it, said that this is what happened, and that Jackie was quite shook up for years. And his career finally recovered when he got that role as Buford T. Justice, the sheriff in Smokey and the Bandit. And that really revived his stardom, and he became a leading man in movies all over again, right up to the point of his death in June of 1987. Now, we all kind of look our noses down at the National Enquirer, and my dad used to get a subscription to it. And I remember in the spring of 87, he showed me this article from the Enquirer that says, "Jackie Gleason's dying of cancer." I said, "Dad, come on, you can't believe anything in the tabloids. Don't believe this." And it turned out to be absolutely true. He died on the same date that his favorite radio broadcaster, Frank Edwards, died in 67, I think. Frank Edwards talked about the Eisenhower encounter on the air on his radio program and died of a sudden and mysterious, I think, heart attack in 67 on June 24th, I believe it was, or around there, June 27th. I forget the exact date. And Jackie died on that exact date in 87. Coincidence, I guess. He was not in good health. Apparently, he did not leave behind a confession, something written and signed, or a quick video clip. If he did, then it was squelched. Nixon did not speak about such matters. You didn't in those days. Presidents didn't say anything. Nowadays, Obama, Clinton, and Bush will get on Jimmy Kimmel or Stephen Colbert and talk a little and say, "Well, I could tell you about it, but it's national security and I have to kill you if I told you." And they'd make a flippant remark, and they don't want to give you a straight answer to whether we're being visited or not. So you mentioned how like Clinton would get into office, and the first thing he wants to know, who killed JFK and are we being visited? And he got the runaround essentially, as did, for the most part, Jimmy Carter, who campaigned on, "I saw a UFO. I don't laugh at people who say they've seen UFOs. And if I become president," he said in 76, "I'm going to release all the files on UFOs because I saw one myself." And as soon as he became president, he looked into it and he clammed up really quick. And he has remained pretty mute on the subject to this day. So something of great substance is going on, and their silence is deafening to me.
Do you believe then that this story is true? Do you believe that there is, I mean, we're taking the words of an ex-wife here,
Right.
who saw her husband at the time through a very traumatic event. And that's all we really have on this.
Yeah. She reports what Jackie told her in a great emotional moment, I guess you would call it. And she fed off of that story and told the whole thing in 2 interviews, and then finally a third long after Jackie's death. I don't find anything in there that she said really all that untrue. She did say the first interview she gave was to Esquire magazine. So I looked that up, and there's no interview with Jackie in 1974's Esquires. She said that was even on the cover, mentioned on the cover. But I did find a 1974 Enquirer article that had Jackie mentioned on the cover. So I think she accidentally got the 2 magazine titles confused. And you can understand Esquire and Enquirer. But other than that, I don't see anything false. She said that Jackie was deeply moved by the experience, and that combined with something an actual American astronaut told him in the early 70s that he saw UFOs and that we are clearly being visited. That confirmed it at last. Jackie's curiosity was satisfied. She said Jackie met this astronaut backstage of a live television show he was co-hosting. So I looked it up, and he co-hosted the Mike Douglas show in late 72 and had a number of guests there. And that he also co-hosted a football special from the Super Bowl in the early 70s. And that could have been it as well. So Jackie didn't want to talk about it is another factor, again, that we can lend credence, that he refused to comment when he could easily have crushed this story. He was asked by Larry Bryant, a top-notch UFO researcher, about this tale. Larry kept after him in 3 different manners of interview attempts, and even sent Jackie an affidavit that he could sign, and Jackie refused to comment. Jackie was a hardcore Freemason. They kept very strict secret rules on talking about secret events, that they were part of their secret organization. So it was at various levels important for Jackie not to comment publicly on this shocking story. That he wanted to, you better believe it, but he told his wife while in an emotional state, and he really didn't say much about it again. As we mentioned in the first hour, he told a couple of friends, well, how do you know aliens are here for sure? And Jackie told them, since they were not UFO people, he said, Nixon showed me the proof. That's all I want to tell you. Nixon showed it to me. So we have that backup. And all the pieces are there. And when you investigate Nixon's whereabouts on that day, there's a window open for that opportunity that night. And he and Jackie were definitely friends. You can see photos of the two of them golfing in the 60s. They golfed together just a few days before the NASA moon landing in July of 69. So they remained buddies until the point where Nixon resigned. And I'm not sure if they ever spoke to each other again. Nixon flew to Key Biscayne, or to Homestead Air Force Base, actually, over 50 times in his presidency to hang out at his Key Biscayne beach house when he had a much bigger, more lavish estate in San Clemente, California. There's another important factor. Nixon often flew to his San Clemente estate and holed up there. But why did he need this place in Florida at all, unless there was ongoing ET contact at that Homestead Air Base? That's speculation on my part, I admit. But it gives you a reason for him to go down the coast over and over to monitor this situation. It was very, very exciting, I'm sure, if it did indeed take place, and at Homestead late at night. So I put that into my book, and the possibility that another famous comedian might have been around. It's still speculative on my part, and might have gone to Homestead to see what Jackie saw. Do you want to know the name of that famous comedian? Well, I mentioned him already. Bob Hope was a big Nixon supporter, went to the White House and hosted Nixon in his home, gave a lot of money. He was super wealthy, Mr. Hope was, from all of his movies and TV shows and his investments. And he was a financial supporter. And he was there that day at Nixon's Jackie's golf tournament, where Nixon arrived and spoke. So he had nothing else to do while guests playing at this golf tournament. Now, I don't know for sure Bob Hope went with Jackie or without, but I do know that Bob Hope strangely became obsessed with building his own custom-designed UFO house, which he had built in 1973 in the months after the Nixon-Gleason alien encounter. And just like Gleason's place in New York State, Bob Hope's Palm Springs home was built circular with a few circular structures around it, like a mothership with small craft around it, like scout ships. That's what it looked like from the air. And Bob had plenty of homes, especially in Palm Springs. Why did he spend all this money to build his own UFO house, just like Jackie did in the months after the Eisenhower encounter of 54? Very strange coincidence. These two events, air bases, late at night, February 19th, the dates coming together. There's just too many factors here for us to say, oh, it was all coincidence. I think it was a deliberate method of operation that worked for Eisenhower, so Nixon duplicated it when he was in South Florida.
Was that the only time that Gleason saw the alien beings, was in this encounter?
I don't know. He could have gone the next year when Mr. Nixon, according to records, was back in Key Biscayne, in and out of his Florida beach house, which had a chopper pad right behind it, I must point out. So Nixon would go from Homestead Air Force Base right to his backyard, essentially, his beach house with the chopper pad on the ocean in Key Biscayne, and have anyone over he wanted to. But it makes you wonder, well, if he had this exclusive house, why didn't he have the bodies imported to the house? And Jackie could have gone over there to the house and seen them. But unless this was an ongoing program at Homestead, where you didn't take the bodies out and start messing around with them at some other locale, this was pretty strict classifications for secrecy and being guarded day and night. So the story all holds together. Whether Jackie saw it on another occasion up close is possible, but I don't have that information. I would suspect in February of 74, on the 19th of February 74, Nixon had just flown back to Washington and spent the day at the White House and in his office at the Executive Office building right across the street. Rather oddly, he had a special office there where he would sneak off to and attend to business in privacy, not the Oval Office. Very odd for a president to do this.
Why did Nixon never disclose?
No president previously had disclosed. Eisenhower kept his mouth shut. Kennedy and Johnson kept their mouths shut. I point out in my 2020 book, the President Eisenhower's Close Encounters, that Johnson and Kennedy could well have had their own trips to air bases. That has been rumored, and that they may have seen otherworldly materials. I wish we knew more information on that, but that Kennedy strangely exchanged lots of phone calls with Eisenhower, went out to Palm Springs and met with him at Eisenhower's golf course home in person 3 times during his brief presidency. They couldn't talk on the phone. They couldn't communicate with aides or through letters. They had to go out and meet in person at this Palm Springs house where Eisenhower had retired. And that's where Lyndon Johnson kept showing up. And he would have meetings with Ike on February 19th in 64 and again in 68, I found out in his records. And they went out golfing, were photographed together, aging Mr. Eisenhower and President Johnson on that exact date, February 19th, 1968. And that was just before the Nixon years. So what is it with that date, unless there was a treaty going on that was a little complicated, had to be discussed, and with the man who put it together in the first place, Dwight Eisenhower.
So you believe then, out of your research, that the Eisenhower story is not only true, but that it was revisited, the contract between extraterrestrials and the American government for speaking for humanity.
Right. I believe that to be true due to circumstantial evidence. Don't have the hard proof. If I did, I think I'd be a millionaire and have my own movie deal and book deal with, the finest publishers in America. I'd be sitting on quite a gold mine of a story. However, all the circumstantial evidence points that Eisenhower did do this. A test pilot in the early 1980s came forward and told a UFO researcher, the Eisenhower story is true. He says, I don't know. I was there. I'm the last survivor of that event, and I want to tell you before the story dies out. And he said that Eisenhower set this up, snuck away from his Palm Springs golf vacation on I think it was a Friday night, yes, February 19th, 1954, and flew out to nearby Edwards Air Force Base, where he met some human-like alien beings. They looked a good deal like humans, said this test pilot, who was called in for his aerodynamic expertise. They spoke to Ike in English. They looked like us, only a little smaller and a little distorted, as if maybe they had bigger ears, less hair, wider nostrils, bigger chest or diaphragm for breathing their air on their home planet. So that it really did happen. These aliens had been monitoring us, knew our language, our customs, and they knew about Eisenhower's test program of atomic bombs that were very dangerous, like kids playing with matches and gasoline, quite frankly. And they warned us not to do these things. And about 8 days later, there was the Castle Bravo explosion of an atomic bomb in the Pacific that turned out to be like 10 times worse than our scientists predicted, causing all kinds of nuclear contamination. It was a real disaster that Eisenhower took a lot of heat for. And so it may be that the aliens knew this was coming and tried to warn him that, you're playing with dynamite here on a scale that you possibly can't imagine, and you're poisoning the sea, the air, and the land. So that's a pretty good motive for having landed in 5 ships, 3 circular, 2 elongated, at Edwards Air Force Base, where they were met by a landing or a U.S. Air Force party that came out and spoke to the landing party and checked them out, make sure they were okay and safe, and gave the okay to Eisenhower, called him at his Palm Springs golf vacation and said, come on out. They're friendly and unarmed. So as a brave man, Eisenhower was no shrinking coward. He was a great general. He flew out there and he met with them, and they were friendly, just as advertised. But he asked them, don't start a panic here. We can't have this. Our world is really not ready for seeing you. So he kept his mouth shut, and the test pilot who was there, important factor, said, Eisenhower swore us all to secrecy, and we lived up to that for decades. But I'm telling you now because I don't want the story to die out. And this is something that Beverly Gleason said Jackie added, that Nixon swore him to secrecy after the tour of Homestead Air Force Base was over. However, Jackie broke that oath that very night when he was all excited and flustered, and he had to explain to his wife where he had been. So there were secrecy oaths that were taken quite seriously, and that's how the lid could be clamped on to this day. But various sources, as I put in my book, did talk now and then, including a source in the Vatican. And that's another exciting tale, that there might be film footage of what Eisenhower went through.
Do you believe then that, Gleason kept things absolutely silent? Obviously he told his wife, but did he keep that silent within his own community of friends? Do you think he told those people? You mentioned Bob Hope earlier.
Yeah. I think he told a couple of friends in the movie industry who had no interest in UFOs. Nixon showed me the proof. But otherwise, he refused all interviews with UFO researchers. There's a few tall tales out there that say from a few UFO people who claim, well, Jackie told me the whole story, when in fact, he was furious that his wife at the time told the tale, and it got into the tabloids, and told her never to discuss this again. He was livid that she had spilled the beans in the first place. And that gives you the clue that he didn't want to talk about it ever. And apparently he did not.
I mean, it's a good gauge to show. We got 1 minute to go here. It's a good gauge to show, Gleason's reaction and the way he became depressed, getting back to that, on the worries of what could happen to the general public if this ever came out.
Yeah, he maybe drank and smoked and ate too much, which was par for the course for Jackie, but even more than normal. He apparently also had trouble sleeping, and he didn't want to work, or he couldn't focus because he had this great experience that he couldn't tell the world. He told his wife, and he can't tell anyone else, and it had to be deeply frustrating. He wanted to maintain that high-level friendship with the President of the United States and not tick him off. And Beverly Gleason was threatening all of that if she were to speak out more about what she knew. So Gleason, a couple of years later, hosted Gerald Ford in mid-February of 1975. There doesn't seem to be within Mr. Ford's presidential records, digitized now at his presidential library, just like Nixon, an open window for him having gone to Homestead with Jackie. Apparently, I don't think they did that. But how much Ford knew about all of this, I'm not aware. But he did show great interest in Congress researching the 66 UFO sighting in his home state of Michigan.
Paul Blake Smith, we have him until the top of the hour on Spaced Out Radio, talking about Gleason, Nixon, UFOs, aliens, and even Eisenhower. We'll be right back with your questions next.
Cheers.
Hot damn, this has been a very fast 90 minutes so far.
It is, I know, for the skeptic or the disbeliever or the maybe even the casual person interested casually in aliens, that this is a little tough to swallow when you first hear. But I try to put as much circumstantial evidence and facts into this in both books to convince the reader. And I hope that when they do, they'll be convinced too. And that's the reaction I'm getting on Amazon in the reviews. Lots of good reviews, like 4.5 out of 5 stars, saying, this guy convinced me. I was skeptical. He made the case, and I'm attempting to do that with my Cape Girardeau UFO book. I'm revamping that, and it should come out later this year. And we could do another show in the fall, if you like, and talk about the 1941 crash.
Well, I would like to actually bring you back next month to talk about Eisenhower.
Well, I hope we didn't cover it too much here.
No,
Tonight.
we got lots to go over. What's your time frame for September?
That would be good, and we'll get together on a date, I'm sure. You're in British Columbia, Canada, did you say?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So this runs at 10 to midnight your time, or
9 to midnight?
Oh, 9 to midnight. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'm staying fully awake, and that's a good sign in my old age that I haven't fallen asleep on you. I'm usually dead asleep at this hour. I'm not much of a great night owl, but I do wake up in the middle of the night, and that's when I start doing work on my book, like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, because there's nothing else to do, nothing on TV unless you like infomercials.
No, I'm not the infomercial guy.
Yeah.
I got the 14th and 21st of September open.
If you'll put that in our little Facebook exchanges, I'll write that down, and we'll. I'm sure that could be worked out. Yes, sir.
All right. Sending it to you or right now. I spelled Eisenhower wrong. Apologize.
One host call him Eisenhower.
Right.
Well, that's an interesting interpretation.
Yeah. I gotta talk to you about that one. That's the other story that just drives me crazy. And I believe that one. I totally believe that one. Everything just makes sense with the
It does. And I was talking to these two podcast hosts, and they said, is this the coolest story ever? And I put that in the lead, the forward to the book, that, yeah, it really is. A U.S. president going to meet with friendly aliens in private. I mean, you can't get any better than this. And it's not a fantasy. I think Eisenhower did it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I can't wait. Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that, and then we'll get you for your next book about Cape Girardeau as well.
Sounds like a plan.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's always fascinating, and I hope that you can get a copy of the book if you haven't already. My publishers, unbelievably, don't sell it at their website. You have to go to Amazon to get it. Long story there. But they trust Amazon to get it out to people, and it seems to be going just fine. And we're talking to TV production people about combining these stories, but the Actors and Writers Guild strike is making a mess of everything.
That'll do it all the time.
Yep. Bottling everything up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is true. That is true. We got about just over 1 minute here.
I'm also piecing together what I know on Ronald Reagan and his experiences. Maybe I can make it a trilogy.
See, Reagan's another one because when you look into, the alleged words that, he said to Steven Spielberg regarding the
Oh
movie
yeah,
Eats.
you don't know how true that movie is. He said that after screening E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and Spielberg kept that to himself for years, and he admitted a couple of years ago that story's true. That Reagan really did say that quite seriously to him. So what does that tell you? He knew plenty. Reagan did.
You got that right. I want to say a big thank you to our super chatters tonight. A hat trick for W. Decker, Baba, Vash the Impaler, Izzy Stradlin, Larry, and Debster. Thank you for the love and support. Very much appreciate it. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe, ring that bell, and do some shopping at our Spaced Out Radio store on our website. Here we go with the next half hour, everybody. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much enjoying tonight's show regarding aliens and President Nixon and Jackie Gleason. What a show so far. Hey, I want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. For the final time tonight, author Paul Blake Smith is here talking about the Nixon-Gleason alien encounter, an investigation into Nixon's secret airbase meetings to view extraterrestrials. It can be found on Amazon right now. Great one to add to your library because the date, February 19th, 1973, which is 3 months and 5 days before my birth on this planet, well, all hell broke loose with Jackie Gleason seeing aliens and a UFO. Paul Blake Smith, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me on. It's been a lot of fun so far. How about a big finish?
Well, let's do it, my man. Let's do it. I mean, conspiracy aside, we're starting to learn that a lot more of these stories are more true than what we used to believe for decades as fiction. We're seeing it right now play out right in front of us with what's going on politically right now with UFOs, with, people like David Grush coming out, Lou Elizondo coming out a few years ago. I mean, at some point, we got to think, man, that this is, stories like the Nixon and Gleason story. There's got to be hundreds of these. Hundreds. Like during the break, for people who didn't hear, we were talking about Ronald Reagan going up to Steven Spielberg after a presentation at the White House with the movie E.T., going up to Reagan and saying, or going up to Spielberg and saying, you have no idea how true this is. And, I've always looked at Spielberg after Close Encounters and then E.T., that this guy's got some inside knowledge, but do you see more of these stories now coming out that could be true?
Yeah, it's certainly in the news. David Grush, the whistleblower with very fine credentials, has told Congress some important information. He's not allowed to tell too much, but he has said contact has been made in private, supporting what I say in my books, and that crash recoveries have happened, supporting what I put in my Cape Girardeau book, and even the Nixon Gleason story about the alien bodies might have been a crash recovery. However, again, Gleason did not really describe the bodies as being injured. He just said he thought they had been embalmed. But anyway, this is what Mr. Grush, the whistleblower, is finding out, and he wants to tell people. And that other witnesses, he's not alone, are saying the same thing. A lot of it comes down to what's being researched at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, legendary Hangar 18. And I believe so many of these stories are true. They've been circulating for a long time. Serious UFO book researchers like Schmidt and Carey have written about Wright-Patterson. I've got a little bit of their stories within my books, especially on the Cape Girardeau affair. And so that we could finally have the dam break and many stories come out, if not some film footage or an old file be leaked or released on purpose, is possible. There is some blowback going on already that they're trying to destroy Mr. Grush's reputation and saying, well, he doesn't know anything, or what does he know from these people who talked to him? Maybe they were liars, or some excuse to try to corrode his believability. And again, he's not alone. And the more they push this, trying to destroy people's careers over this, the more it might upset other whistleblowers to come forward. Marco Rubio, a senator, says, you wouldn't believe the number of people we have coming forward. And the stories they're telling, that what we have in private, far more UFO videos than the government has released in particular. So this could be more of a subject we're going to hear about in the coming years. And it's basically what I've said in my books to this point, that the American government knows full well that we're being visited, has the proof, has been examining it for a long time, and maybe complicit with the Canadian government and the British government and even the Russians and Chinese on keeping the lid on this thing. A few years ago, Dmitry Medvedev of the old Soviet Union, or currently Russia, said on a hot mic that there's a file that he looks at on the extraterrestrial visitation, and that, people are not allowed to see this, but he's read it. And he didn't know he was on camera or, being recorded at the time when he said this. And there's just more proof that the Russians know what's going on, and they're keeping the lid on. They don't want to set off social disorder, chaos, people possibly quitting their jobs or quitting their religion or quitting school over this issue, feeling like, why should we go through these trivial, mundane, everyday things when, we want the data on UFOs, we want to learn more, or even worse, some people being foolish enough to worship extraterrestrials as perhaps gods. And the idea of a religion going about whatever extraterrestrials have to say once they have been exposed as landing here and speaking here at length. So it's a fascinating subject that hopefully will get more data than these recent congressional hearings. Let's hope they break the dam and more water comes flowing out.
Here's what's interesting. Going back to the Eisenhower one, there's two stories. Okay, that one set of extraterrestrials wasn't too good, and one wanted to really, really help out humanity. And it was said that during the Cold War that he didn't want to give up nukes.
Right. Part of the Eisenhower story that we could do another show on is the aliens said, we've allegedly said that we've got a clean energy program we can help you with to avoid fossil fuels and polluting your planet. Yeah, and that they may have turned them down.
Extending human life. So you're not living, 70, 80 years. You're living 180, 280 years. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that was said. But the interesting part about that is we've heard about these good aliens in the past, but now when we're talking extraterrestrials, everything seems to be a threat. There's a threat narrative behind absolutely everything. And I understand that threats mean budget. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But where do you stand on that? Because it is quite a flip from somebody like Eisenhower and Nixon talking about, we're in contact, we got a good relationship, and then moving forward to today, where we even hear David Grush saying these things are not very friendly. We got to be careful around them. They don't care for us.
I've heard this a number of times that most of them coming here are either friendly or benign. but there is a small percentage of those who are visiting who are not friendly, have no empathy or sympathy for human life, and they are a danger. However, I find it foolish to believe that we're going to be invaded or attacked. Aliens probably have been observing us for thousands, if not perhaps millions of years. They had plenty of opportunity to attack or invade or take over Earth, to wait till we're all armed and countries have nuclear weapons and everyone's tense and on edge. You could get shot out now just pulling into someone's driveway, that aliens are going to be landing and maybe trying something friendly or unfriendly now is a very dicey theory. And so we've also unearthed far more bacteria and germs now here on planet Earth. And with the melting ice caps, we're unearthing more old germs and bacteria that was in the like Arctic and Greenland and Iceland and in the permafrost, and it's making people sick. So it would be really foolish for aliens to come down and try to do anything of a malevolent nature on planet Earth. However, I think there are some who might just sit back and let us destroy ourselves and not care if we go to atomic war and nuclear winter on planet Earth. I think there are some that are more proactive and friendly and trying to help us avoid that. But again, I go back to the Eisenhower encounter in which they said the aliens were human-like and friendly and monitoring human progress, and that they offered one story, one allegation, is they offered a clean energy program, and Eisenhower eventually turned them down because they thought it would greatly upset our economic system of government and finance and business, that it would disrupt the stock market, and it would be just too far advanced, that we weren't ready for advanced energy system, clean energy, which is tragic considering the pollution we used to at least pour into our atmosphere and into our water.
Very true. Very true. Okay, let's get to a couple questions from our audience here. So let's start off with Matt. Do you guys think that there are benevolent races of aliens, or should we not put our human mortality onto them?
Well, our morality, but I see what he's saying. And we've kind of addressed that, yeah. And it's difficult to get a grip on, but so many stories are of grays, and that the grays wander around in rural settings and look over people and put them back, possibly with a kind of marker or object that tags them. And that's disturbing, but they don't mutilate the people. They don't torture them. They just look them over and maybe probe them and put them back in their beds. My own chiropractor was telling me about a Missouri farmer in this area. I believe he's deceased now. The farmer had this big bulbous growth on the back of his neck. And so he went to the chiropractor. Can you help me with this? Doctors can't seem to help me. Well, how did you get this? And he said, I was in my bedroom on my farm, and these extraterrestrials came into my bedroom. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. I could see them. I was terrified. They were small gray beings, your typical grays with big bulbous heads and black eyes, like what was seen in Cape Girardeau in 41. Well, he said that they did something to his neck, and it was not a cancerous growth, and that the bulbous part of his neck was giving him great pain, and the chiropractor wasn't able to help him too much, and the farmer passed away. But he swore that there was a gun in the room and he couldn't reach out to grab it. He was paralyzed, and that they walked around at will and did whatever they want in this rural setting. So that's an example, just one story, of how some of these stories are a little disturbing, but we haven't been attacked or invaded. We haven't been infected with nasty germs or disease that can be traced back to otherworldly origins. I know there was a pandemic a couple of years ago, but that was of earthly origin. So it's a subject we can't get hysterical or extreme on. We got to keep our heads screwed on straight and not believe every crazy story out there. But I do believe we are being visited, and there is a variety of personalities that come here, psychological approaches to the human race and our plants and our animals were like a wildlife preserve, very fascinating. And other races come here and check us out. Why not? We've got a lot of drama going on every day here.
I get that. I do get that. And I do believe there are prominent species of extraterrestrials that are benevolent as well, but we can't forego that there are some bad ones out there that are doing some pretty heinous tests on people. And who knows, maybe some of these missing people are, taken by extraterrestrials. We don't know. Friends with Monsters is asking, do you think they've stopped briefing presidents on it because of this Nixon Gleason encounter?
It's a really good question, and I'm not sure, not being privileged to the White House or having a president confide in me personally. I just go back and forth on what presidents know. I think they were informed plenty in the days of the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, but it may have trickled down and been clamped down on more. I think Biden may know some things, but he's also not releasing documents. He doesn't seem to talk about this. He's an old school senator who had contact with the Intelligence Committee, and he probably knows a good deal, and he ain't talking. So I don't have a lot of faith that he personally will help us learn the facts. There is a CIA agent named Ramirez, John Ramirez, I think it is, who has come forward to say the government in America wants to keep the lid on this for about 3 more years, that something is coming around the year 2027 to cause us to try to stall out the clock, so to speak, our government, and not give you any straight answers until this particular year and particular event. He won't say what it is, if even he knows. But that's an interesting allegation, that he apparently did work for the government and knew some things. And what he has heard is the government wants to keep the lid on the story as best they can for whatever reasons they have. Again, probably not to trigger a panic. I don't think we will. I mean, we're far better braced up for the truth now than in the 1940s or 50s, when this was far less mainstream and discussed. Now it's talked about on the media, on television, radio, internet, websites, books, magazines, and it's taken very seriously by some serious people, especially coming forward lately. So what kind of future can we expect for the next 3 years? I don't know. Maybe a little in dribs and drabs.
All right, let's get to another question. Let's go to D. Cypher. Do you think Gordon Cooper ever met with Nixon after his sighting at Edwards Air Force Base in 1957?
Cooper had a sighting. Well, he had no sighting at Edwards Air Force Base. He was part of a film crew that he sent out into the desert in 57, a few years after the Eisenhower encounter, and the film crew recorded a silver spaceship coming down to land on a dry lake bed not too far away. So the film crew showed him the footage, and he was amazed. Astronaut, he wasn't quite an astronaut yet. He was a U.S. Air Force test pilot at the time. So he and the film crew packaged it up and sent it to Washington, D.C., to the Pentagon, and they never heard back from it. But Cooper was a friend to Richard Nixon and gave him a tour of NASA headquarters during the 68 presidential campaign. And guess who was at the Jackie Gleason golf tournament in February of 1973? Gordon Cooper, a hardcore Freemason, just like Jackie. They had plenty in common. I suspect it was Cooper who was the astronaut who told Jackie we are being visited, and that Cooper talked about I think a 1963 UFO encounter he had while on a space mission, and that it was asked to be kind of hushed up, don't talk about it. But he would talk to Jackie, because there's a fellow aficionado of the ET subject. So he just happened to be at the golf tournament near Nixon and Gleason that afternoon. Maybe not a coincidence. He certainly would have been welcomed at any U.S. Air Force base as a great test pilot and as a great astronaut.
All right,
and that's in the book.
We have 5 minutes to go here. in a show that has absolutely flown on by. Are there any other Nixon Gleason type stories out there that you've heard rumor of that we haven't maybe heard of in the public yet?
Any president, you mean, or just specifically between Nixon and Gleason?
Any president?
I guess not. They're so darn tight-lipped about these matters, and when pressed on national TV, jocular about it, they'll make a silly remark, and everyone chuckles. And you could tell Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Fallon are very frustrated because they want to know, and they ask direct questions and can't get any straight answers. Obama, Clinton, Bush, they won't give you the facts. So something keeps them from talking. And Carter, too, and he saw a UFO in 1969, and he saw it in Georgia, where Dwight Eisenhower frequently went golfing in Augusta. So I suspect the presidents know some more than others. I think the handlers of the UFO subject in America, in the NSA and the DIA, control this matter and may dole out bits and pieces on a need-to-know basis if they trust the president to keep his mouth shut. And it may be they did not trust Bill Clinton too much. And that's why he looked into the subject through an aide and didn't get too much back.
Yeah, Clinton would be one that I think would say something. We know Bush, when he was on one of the late night shows where he was asked, and he's like, "No, I'm not talking about it."
Yeah, and Mr. Trump was known as a bit of a loose cannon. I don't think they would have told him too much. And he publicly has said he's not very interested in the subject. He says, I'm not a UFO guy. So we have to count on Biden. And so far, after about 3 years, he ain't said nothing either. So there was the story earlier in the year about these alleged balloons or UAPs or UFOs that got shot down. Some were genuine articles of espionage, these Chinese balloons that are spying on maybe Canada and America and our air bases and military installations. But other things, allegedly, I've heard rumors that we did shoot down something of an outer space nature, and it was taken to an air base in Delaware for Biden to have a quick look at. I don't know if that pure rumor is true or not, but that happened earlier this year, and the lid is clamped down on that as well.
All right. When we bring you on in September, we are going to get into the whole aspect of the Eisenhower case. Give us a little tease on that. What intrigues you about the fact that Eisenhower may have met up with extraterrestrials?
Eisenhower was in charge of American forces in World War II in Europe, where they had a lot of Foo fighters and orbs and strange lights that were tailing RAF fighters and American airplanes. So I think that's when he first became knowledgeable that we're being visited. And there was an incident with Winston Churchill and a bodyguard who came forward later, decades later, to say Eisenhower and Churchill discussed UFOs right in front of me and said, we need to keep the lid on this story because it would upset organized religion and people's faith in God. So that set the tone for the next decades, I think, especially with Eisenhower. And I put that in my Eisenhower book, and how he may have had his own encounter while aboard a ship off the coast of France in early 1952. And we'll get to that in September. And any other detail you want to go into, because it is a fascinating and exciting subject that Eisenhower had more than one encounter. He was very knowledgeable. He was familiar with aerodynamics, and he was the first U.S. president to own a pilot's license. So he was no dummy. He knew about flight and aircraft and, our gravitational forces. So he was the perfect guy to go to if you were a landed friendly alien who wanted to contact the man in charge. It would have been Ike.
Well, I thank you for that, and I cannot wait to bring you back on next month to talk about the Eisenhower case. And we encourage all of our listeners to head on over to Amazon and pick up Paul Blake Smith's The Nixon Gleason Alien Encounter an investigation into Nixon's secret airbase meetings to view extraterrestrials. And while you're there, pick up his Eisenhower book, because we're going to be talking about it next month. Paul Blake Smith, thank you so much for a great show on Spaced Out Radio tonight.
It did speed by just like you promised, and we'll do the same in a couple months, sir.
Absolutely. Paul Blake Smith, everybody. Coming up next, Steve Stockton's going to bring us a spooky story from Among the Missing. Then our resident Timbit, little Timmy Senor, brings us the UFO report. Hour 3 is next. Great show, Paul. Great show.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was enjoyable for me too, and now I'm wide awake at 1 o'clock in the morning, but that's my problem.
Oh, my friend, I really appreciate you doing this. I've wanted to do this story for so long, and you brought it tonight. You really brought it.
I try to deal in facts and serious allegations, and I think people respond to that, and I know you did, and we'll do the same in September. We'll get together on a date.
Okay, I've got those dates in your Facebook. You just let me know which one you want, and we'll get to it. But thank you. I'll let you go for now, and talk soon.
All right. Thank you again. See ya.
Take care. Paul Blake Smith, everybody. How awesome was that? I'm blown away right now. Blown away. That was amazing. That's what I love about this show. That interview right there. I'll be right back. I'm still stoked over that one. Still stoked over that one. All right. Thank you tonight to Pam H., Bash the Impaler, Baba W. Decker with a hat trick, Izzy Stradlin, Larry, and Deb for the great super chats. I hope you really enjoyed Paul there. I was blown away. Cannot wait to talk about the Eisenhower story next month. Cannot wait. Pumped up. Pumped up. Thank you to all our brand new listeners for hitting that subscribe button and ringing that bell tonight. Really appreciate it. And for those of you who've done some shopping at our website, spacedoutradio.com, send us some pictures of you and our swag, so that way we can put them on our website.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Always appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us, will you, at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. What do you got for us, Clam? Lagan. Lagan is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. It is that time again. We kick off hour 3 with our good friend Steve Stockton from Among the Missing and another creepy story.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Among the Missing YouTube channel on Spaced Out Radio. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'm about to take you on an unbelievable journey of people just like you. Their stories and encounters will haunt us on Among the Missing. Now, the stories we normally cover on this channel of people who seem to have disappeared from the face of the earth definitely have a unique, eerie quality about them. But perhaps what is almost as disturbing, if not even more so, is people that seem to have appeared from nowhere. The following cases are astoundingly bizarre, and some almost border on the supernatural. Are these time travelers? Examples of spontaneous trans-teleportation? Visitors from an alternate dimension? Portals? Of course, it's up to you to decide what you personally believe, but here are some more strange appearances for you to ponder. The Philippine soldier. On October 26, 1593, long time ago, a dazed man was observed walking the streets of Mexico City near the town plaza. Guards took notice of the man due to his strange appearance and his demeanor. The man was donning a pristine Philippine military uniform and seemed to be in a trance as he wandered about the area. Now, this particular area was under heavy security at the time, and the guards were very concerned how this intruder had slipped into a restricted area. It seems as though he had just materialized from thin air. The guards quickly detained the stranger and began questioning him. The following statement is what the man had to say. Claiming his name was Gil Perez, the man told the suspicious guards that he himself was also a guard and a soldier tasked with a high alert status in Manila, where Governor Don Gomez Perez das Marinas had just been assassinated that day. Tired from his lengthy post, he had simply leaned against a wall and closed his eyes but for a moment. Upon opening them, he was shocked to see new surroundings and smell unfamiliar scents. Not letting this new set of circumstances deter him from his duties, he tried to find a familiar area to return to his post, but quickly realized that all the men around him were wearing different uniforms. He tried to remain calm and inconspicuous, but obviously the different uniform and bewildered look on his face as he scanned the unfamiliar surroundings landed him in an interrogation room where he now sat. The guards, having been suspicious before, were now on extremely high alert from this fantastical tale. These guards didn't give in to flights of fancy and promptly threw the man into prison, charging him with being a liar at the very least and most assuredly a servant of the devil. Although it was unknown in Mexico at this particular time, the death of Philippine Governor Das Marianas had indeed taken place. This information wouldn't be delivered until months after the strange man was imprisoned, when a ship from the Philippines arrived carrying, amongst other soldiers, news of the Manila governor's death. The tale was backed by a supposed friend of Perez, stating he knew the soldier and actually witnessed him on duty the day he was transported or arrived strangely in Mexico City. Having to give some stock to the man's wild accounts, the Mexican guards decided to lend some credence to the surprisingly true, although far-fetched, accounts of the day's events for their prisoner. Having several of the ship's men vouch for him, Fred was said to have been released and allowed to return home on the ship to Manila. The story has been retold over centuries and undoubtedly lost some facts and may have even gained some tall tales, but who knows? Perez's accounts of that day have widely been disputed as the ramblings of a deserter. Others claim Perez was abducted by aliens and transported to the area where he was found. Still, others claim this is an early documentation of interdimensional portals at play.
Thank you to Steve Stockton for another great story tonight on the Mighty SORs. He kicks off hour number 3, creeping us out each and every night, Monday through Friday. If you want more, you can listen to more. Just go on over to youtube.com/Among the Missing. Hit subscribe, ring that bell, and he gets right to it. From the missing to the stars, it is time to bring in our resident Timbit, Little Timmy Senor, and the UFO Report.
Nobody's gonna know. They're gonna know.
It's always good to have you here, Little Timmy Senor. It's been a wild week and a wild month so far, in the past couple of weeks at least. And, you know, it's always good to share some UFO news with you. I mean, I'm still getting people coming up. Where's Tim Senor been? Where's he been hiding?
Well, I'm here. I've just been nose to the grindstone and doing work for you guys, trying to get my head wrapped around what this UAP thing is all about. But I've got a few stories for you. A couple of things are going on, and you and I really never talked about the hearings because I was actually mid-travel on the 26th when this took place. So maybe we could just kind of break down those major takeaways and see if we can figure out exactly what might be to come.
Hey, we could go wherever you want, my man. Whatever you want to speak about, people are listening to you because they love you, Tim. You know, after staring on YouTube at my face for radio for a while, all of a sudden they see a handsome mug like yours come on out, and they're like, yep, I'm in.
Stop
So,
it.
what did your take? I mean, looking back on the hearings and the incredible testimony by David Grush, who I think stole the entire show again. All right. I didn't expect him to break down as much as he did over that period. What was your take looking back on it?
I thought it was incredibly profound and well-timed, and he had a ton of support. It was great to see filmmaker Jeremy Corbell and, of course, George Knapp, along with the lawyer that was representing David Grush right there behind him while he was speaking. I thought that lended a lot of credibility and support. So when he was able to actually lay down some of that information, even if he had to say at some points that some of that information had to be discussed in a skiff privately, I think that a lot of the topics that needed to be covered still were. And so a few of the big takeaways I'd love to cover with you. For example, the first one, the claims of a cover-up, right? So the US government concluded and conducted a multi-decade program which collected and attempted to reverse engineer crashed UFOs. And so, according to David Grush, he led an analysis of an unexplained anomalous phenomenon within U.S. Department of Defense agency until 2023, and claimed he had been denied access to secret government UFO programs. He said that he faced very brutal, quote, retaliation as a result of his allegations. And he claimed that he had knowledge of people who had been harmed or injured in the course of government efforts to conceal the information. So that's obviously some hints of violence. And then Congressman Tim Burchett asked Rush if he had any personal knowledge of people who had been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal extraterrestrial technology. And of course, we know Grush replied yes. And so Burchett asked if he had heard of anyone being murdered. The former intelligence official answered, I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities. Some pretty heavy-duty claims. And right off the bat, do you have any response to that? Personally, that was kind of some big stuff for me. I can go through my list, but I'd love to get your take on that one because that's a biggie.
Well, you know what? The big thing for me isn't so much about the testimony. It is about the idea that he brought up what we had all suspected in the UFO community, which is that people have been hurt and or lost their lives due to this topic one way or another. And he was pointing the finger directly at the alphabet agencies and the military for taking care of business, if we could use that term for this. And it's an ugly thing because, like I said last week, it reminds me of, do you remember the song Right Now by Van Halen back in 1991? Okay.
Sure.
On their video, they had one of the most powerful statements on that video, which said, right now, your government is doing what you only thought other governments did, or something along those lines. That's exactly what this is. Okay. We're talking the United States of America, man.
Yeah,
We're not supposed to take out our own.
that's
Okay.
right.
I'm not
That's right.
American, but I'm using we because 90% of our audience is in the US. Okay. And I look at that as, when we look at things like that, that's what China does. That's what Iran does. That's what North Korea does. That's what Syria does. Okay. That's what, a lot of these uh, rogue nations do. This is what, ISIS does. This is what the Taliban do, not the American government. And yet here we are watching David Grush, who many are calling a patriot, coming out and talking, ripping that dirty blanket off and saying, look what's underneath the covers. That's powerful.
Yeah.
And many of those politicians that sat in on that, they were jaw-struck.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a moment that you saw a ripple go across the room when that realization came across the people in that room. And using violence or insinuating murder to ensure secrecy on this topic is pretty heavy. And so I thought that that was a pretty big deal. And then we get into the Pentagon denials, the fact that the Pentagon denied Grush's claims of the cover up rather than coming forward with support. In a statement, a Defense Department spokesman said investigators had not discovered, quote, any verifiable information to substantiate the claims that any programs regarding the possession of or reverse engineering of extraterrestrial materials have existed in the past or exist currently. Massive denial from the Pentagon. So that was a pretty big takeaway from this whole program that was put forward to supposedly bring truth forward. And then other witnesses and other claims, including David Fravor, former Navy commander, who recalled seeing a strange object in the sky while on a training mission in 2004. And of course, Ryan Graves, a retired Navy pilot who has since founded the Americans for Safe Aerospace, a UAP nonprofit that claimed that he saw a UAP off the Atlantic coast, quote, every day for at least a couple of years. So some major big statements coming from other witnesses, not just whistleblowers. So firsthand witnesses there. And so obviously there are some doubts that linger. Excuse me. And a lot of people have come forward, journalists and people in politics coming forward on both sides of this. But now we know that there is yet legislation to come. So in his closing remarks, Republican Congressman Glenn Grothman described the hearings as, quote, illuminating, and said he believed legislation would follow. So he's the chair of the House Subcommittee on National Security and the Border and Foreign Affairs. And he said, quote, obviously, I think several of us are going to look forward to getting some answers in a more confidential setting. I assume some legislation will come out of this. And so we can also assume that. And I think that that is a massive takeaway, to see that there will be some changes to come in how lawmakers decide to look at this topic and consider it as a reality, and know that these things are in our airspace and need to be considered when we're looking into it a little bit deeper, and, you know, potentially put some more dollars towards researching it. I think that is definitely what this boils down to, is that it needs more research. And obviously it is that time.
It is that time, and we're going to see where this goes. I mean, what we need now, in my opinion, is we need a couple more whistleblowers to take some of that pressure off of David Grush. Now, why would they? I don't know. Would it be a smart move by them? Well, it'd be a smart move for the public to have them come out, and it would be smart for David Grush to applaud them coming out for telling their amazing stories regarding what they know. Okay. But they have to be people who can advance David Grush's speech. Okay. Because remember, Grush never saw any UFOs, he never saw any aliens. Those stories are secondhand. Can you imagine if all of a sudden we are getting stories from people who have seen it firsthand, who are protected under the Whistleblowers Act? That's what we need. We need one or two of those at minimum to come out and talk about this, if they exist. Okay. We can only hope. We can only hope. But I mean, your thoughts. Do you think that would take a lot of pressure off of Grush?
Absolutely. And I think we're going to see a lot more people coming out of the woodwork in support. For example, recently in The Hill, Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet came forward and posted his statements in support of the witnesses that came forward, calling them brave, and also supporting a lot of the information that was brought forward. And so as a retired Navy flag officer, he was able to attest the integrity and authenticity of the two pilots who testified, retired Commander David Fravor and Ryan Graves, and he served on 3 aircraft carriers, and he can count many naval aviators that consider them close friends. And so he says that these two witnesses are the real deal. And he says, so is David Grush. As a Navy information warfare officer, he says he closely worked with the intelligence community and David Grush's former command, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. So he says in a quote, I too have been read into the special access programs, and I understand how Department of Defense classification systems and authorities work. His testimony is 100% credible. So we're definitely going to see more people like this coming forward to support that, and potentially some more firsthand witnesses, because I think that is going to hold as much weight as anything at this point. So I'm pretty excited about it. This is great, support coming forward, and we need more of it.
What do you think of what random guy posted in the chat room here just a couple of minutes ago regarding Peter Thiel, who is allegedly the money backer for Enigma Labs, putting in a huge infusion through Palantir, who is a defense contractor for the computers of the Department of Defense, in a redistribution contract? Do you think that money is going to funnel its way to Enigma Labs to be the program of the future?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If you're seeing a support there, that means that there's collaboration. I have my Enigma 3 shirt on tonight. This is actually studio gear that we ended up renting out in Salt Lake. But coincidentally, yeah, that must have triggered some Enigma fans out there. But yeah, absolutely. You can see that kind of collaboration taking place. I'm unaware of that, so I would love to know more. But anytime you see that kind of thing happening, it's a big flag as to what their abilities are, or what they're looking into, or the kind of collaborations they're hoping to gain out of something like that.
Mm-hmm. I think we're going to see more posturing, and that's what's going to happen. We're going to see more posturing. We're going to see a lot more of these types of situations happen. And so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, my friend. It really is. And I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to it. And I hope you are too. We got 2 minutes to go here before we got to go to break. At the bottom of the hour, little Timmy Senor is here with the UFO report. And apparently there's some pilots. We're seeing some very strange things in Arizona. Warm us up for the next half hour.
Yeah, U.S. fighter jets are having worrisome aerial encounters in Arizona's restricted air combat training areas. And that fits with a broader trend that we've seen in that area as far back as the Phoenix Lights, and probably even earlier. So encounters with small unidentified objects, sometimes in swarm-like groups, as many as 8, and the sightings of other objects, including some characterized as drones, flying at altitudes of up to 36,000 feet and as fast as Mach 0.75. And so another apparent small drone actually hitting the canopy of an F-16 Viper caused damage. And these incidents and more all occurred in and or around various military air combat training ranges in Arizona since January of 2020. And so we're going to look deeply into this with a cool report that we got from the War Zone and the Drive. And we're going to dig a little deeper into this, because some of it's drones, but some of it might not be. And it's moving at incredible rates. And Dave, sometimes they're in swarms, which is really interesting, because typically drones are in a pack of maybe 6 to 8, but these are dozens, and they're coming from really high altitudes down to the ground at extreme speeds. Typical drones don't move like that. And so we're going to dig a little deeper, and I'm excited to get your response.
I look forward to it, little Timmy Senor, as I do every time you were on Spaced Out Radio tonight. It is pretty fantastic when we could bring this UFO news to you and all of us out there in UFO land. The UFO report with Tim Senor continues with UFOs over Arizona being chased by fighter pilots. Let's bring this thing home when we return on the Mighty SOR. There we go. We got some serious RG sightings in the chat room tonight. Random guy.
I miss that smile. That guy.
Yeah. Yeah, he's all right.
You want to see a pretty picture?
I do. Hold on, let me bring it up here.
Let's see if I can get that to focus a little bit.
It is
better.
focused.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Pretty cool
Beautiful.
stuff.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Beautiful.
What do you think that is? That little thing. Captured a lens flare. It looks bizarre though.
That is bizarre. I know that lighting.
You do know that lighting.
Totally know that lighting. Stolen from Vancouver. No, I'm teasing.
It's really hard to. Let's see if I can zoom in on this one. Because it's actually. No, it really doesn't want to. It's kind of a diamond. Don't know what it is, but it's a diamond.
Beauty.
Beauty.
Beauty. All right. I'm going to find... Let's see here. Let's go back here. Close that out. Very cool. All right.
Oh, Canada. How cold you are at night.
Oh, come on.
Dude.
It wasn't cold at all. It wasn't. Oh, maybe the second night was a little chilly. Okay.
This guy.
The second night was a little chilly. But I mean, overall, it was good.
No doors, no roof. Let's roll.
What do you mean there was no doors? The doors were on.
You know who has a sign up in downtown Salt Lake? Billboard.
Brandon?
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Free advertising for him. If you need a building.
Phone Brandon.
Could see that from my hotel window. I had a chuckle. It's also a hint where we were.
Mm-hmm. I know.
You know, you guys have so many deer in your yard. That is the coolest thing. They're just chilling.
You like the deer in my yard.
Yeah, you guys have a feeding frenzy going on in your backyard.
Yeah. That is true.
Dave's yard is beautiful.
Yeah, except my lawnmower being broken. That bugs me.
You have 2 lawnmowers right there.
Yeah, they don't eat the grass very well.
Good stuff.
All right. Gotta find something here. All right. Thank you to our super channelers, Hattricks for Random Guy and W. Decker, Deb, Larry, Izzy Stradlin, Baba, Vash the Impaler, Pam H, and Cat Chaser. Very much appreciate the love and support. And here we go with the next half hour of the UFO Report.
Put yourself back on screen.
Here we go with the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We very much appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. If you've missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue with the UFO Report. Little Timmy Senor is back, and we're talking aliens in Arizona. What's going on with these flying objects there, Timmy?
Well, there have been a number of encounters between military aircraft and what are described as groups of craft flying together in the past 3 years or so in this specific part of the U.S. For instance, back in the 29th of 2021 of March, two pilots flying F-35s in the vicinity of Buckeye, Arizona, made a report about 3 or 4 what they're calling UAS, or unmanned aerial systems, off the right side. And that was about 17,000 feet, according to the FAA. And then back on April 22nd of 2022, another F-35 pilot reported 8 silver UAS at an altitude of between 16,000 and 20,000 feet. So they're starting to see these things pretty regularly, and it's not clear whether these were actually observed on both radar or just visually, but a lot of these incidents were being reported. And so, Dave, knowing that there's this many reports coming in, and I'd love to give some more of them just off the bat, what's your take knowing that they're coming so close and probably being now reported to Congress that they're actually having some near misses? Do you feel like this is potentially what is the big concern in Congress right now?
I think they gotta, well, of course, I mean, anything is a safety issue. Remember, if these are ours, okay, if this technology is ours, but being hidden, but tested on the United States Air Force and the U.S. military, we have to remember this, okay? And that is, you're testing it against the greatest force ever. And you're also going for budgets on a threat narrative for these. It makes great sense that if these objects are ours, that it's going to create a budget for threats on this planet. You can hide behind the UFO. You can hide behind the extraterrestrials. That's easy to do. Okay, but very few people actually know what's happening in test facilities, whether it's in the deserts of California or the deserts in Nevada or other test facilities. We don't really know what they got. We can assume, as laymen can, but we don't know really what they have. Do they have that technology to fly at hypersonic speed or way above hypersonic speed to drop from 50,000 feet down to sea level in under a second? Do we have that technology? We're not meant to know. There are probably people out there who will nod their head and say, I know. And yes, that is the reality of it. It ain't aliens, it's us. Okay? There are those people out there. And they're in the know, looking and laughing at all of us. Because we think it's little gray dudes who are running around. Now, you've had aliens, I've had aliens, random guys had aliens, you know? I mean, those of us who've had aliens, we know that there is something more to it. We just can't prove it. Okay, so if these are extraterrestrial, I think we have to look at it that way as well, Tim, and say, okay, why are they trying to stir up the crap with our fighter pilots? Are they trying to test their defenses? Are they trying to test how good they are? Are they just playing games like we would a game of chess? What's it all about?
Well, I think another example that they had from March 25th of 2021, where pilots in a pair of F-35s flying in the vicinity of Casa Grande, Arizona, which is situated between Phoenix and Tucson, reported, quote, a large white UAS. So that was at about 24,000 feet. And according to one entry in the FAA logs, quote, the object, which appeared to be stationary, was described as a small general aviation aircraft or a very large unmanned aerial system. And so there were multiple reports at that point also being picked up on radar. And some of these things actually motivate from that level up into almost space. And I think that that is when some of these reports become interesting. And they also go into a gray area into the reporting, because once it goes into space, it's in another domain and it's not necessarily under the observation of FAA. And so that's when I was wondering how they're reported and counter-reported, and does Space Force get involved, and at what point does NASA know about it? And obviously, when they're at that height, it may not be observable by our common radar. And so, for example, another sighting on December 13th of 2022, where the FAA's data says that a pilot in an F-35 flying in the eastern end of a section restricted or considered restricted airspace, and this would be within the Barry M. Goldwater range, made a report about what they described as 4 UAS, as seen below in this entry, which I'll describe. Although no evasive action was taken, it was also reported by the county sheriff. And in that description, if you click on it, it says that the description from the sheriff said that this object shot up into space at incredible rates, which is incredibly interesting. And you can also say that a lot of these were observed by multiple sources. What do you think happens when the jurisdiction is both considered by FAA and then into space? Now, is that under someone else's quote unquote jurisdiction at this point, Dave, or how does that happen? And how is it reported? Because that's pretty unusual.
I don't know.
Well, typical drones don't do that, right?
Well, I agree with you. Typical drones don't do that. Okay, but once again, we don't know the technology that we have. All right, we don't know what they could do with these drones. I mean, remember, as silly as it seems, a lot of these drones are flown by video game players that have been hired by the military, especially ones in battlefields. They get trained on the real thing, and to them it's like just playing Call of Duty from the sky. I mean, and drones are becoming so advanced now with their heights, their distances, their maneuverability, their steadiness. I mean, why couldn't it be a drone? Why couldn't these Tic Tacs or whatever be a human drone?
Well, I mean, some of these seem to move in coordination with each other. Another case here had an observation that started at 21,000 feet of a single object. And then, according to the HATR, which I believe is the record of importance here, the second observation was at 14,500 feet of approximately 8 small objects. And so the unredacted portions of this do not say that the second F-35 had to maneuver evasively in either of those instances, but both jets involved in these separate encounters with groups of objects that day were from the Air Force's 56th Fighter Wing of Luke Air Force Base and were conducting training sorties at the time. And they were unable to return to base without a further they were able to return to base without further incident, but they did have to divert off course, and it averted their training mission. So these things moving in coordination, doesn't that kind of tend to, I mean, at that speed, typically not drone behavior, right? I mean, we can go through these case by case, but they're often small, black and metallic with no kind of trajectory or, that normal drones would be able to take, no rotors and no propulsion of any visual kind. So that's also not typical. Do you have any feeling on any of this? Because typically you could assume that this could be technology of our own. However, when you see it go from land level up into space, you start to scratch your head.
Well, let me tell you this. As far as we know, and I'm going to come at this from a completely different standpoint, Tim. As far as we know, these types of interactions are not happening with the Canadian Armed Forces and the Canadian Air Force. So why is it happening to American pilots, but it is not happening to forces elsewhere that we know of? Now, in talking with Chris Rakowski, who gets a lot of the reports from the Department of National Defense up here in Canada, these reports of these extreme close encounters are not taking place. And remember, the Department of National Defense came out and said there is zero threat narrative for UFOs / UAP, whatever you want to call them, in Canadian skies. So why does this keep happening to America? Okay, well, you could say, well, America is the most powerful force with the best technology, blah, 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 blah. Okay, but other countries have air forces. Is this happening with the British Air Force? Is this happening with the Swedish Air Force, the French Air Force, the Spanish Air Force, the Australian Air Force, the Russian Air Force, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Indians? Where's theirs? Is this happening? And we don't know. We know there's been incursions, okay, like the famous one in Iran with an F-4 Phantom. We know that military has tracked them. But are these, like Ryan Graves said, when they were seeing the cubes were up there almost every day. Why is this not happening to other forces? That's what we need to know.
Oh, I think it is, Dave. I absolutely think it is. And I think it comes down to reporting. And a lot of these countries are looking to the United States to see how we handle these reports. And obviously, we're setting up things like Enigma, and Ryan Graves has his program for pilots to report to. But unless you see these independent companies perhaps coming forward with a safe way to report, it's not going to happen. And so they're still very much stigmatized in the military in other countries. So reports are limited, and we see that, and they're leaked out usually when we do see them. And of course, we have the media and how it's handled that way. So a lot of those reports get muddled and we don't see them whatsoever. And when we do get them, they're so convoluted with misinformation, we don't know it's real. So I would definitely consider the fact that Ryan Graves, as you brought up, has put together a program that's safe for pilots to report to, and other countries probably are looking to something like that to duplicate so that they can have the kind of information that's necessary to even do some research on this topic, because it is necessary for those people on the forefront that are viewing this and reporting and being able to get data on it to have a safe place to report. And so I think we'll start to see more of it, as we've seen in the past. Other countries tend to follow after the United States when they see something working. Hopefully they see these programs working for us and duplicate that and do the same.
Well, let's move on to our final topic of the night here, if you don't mind, because I think it's an interesting, fascinating topic that was in thehill.com. And that's, you mentioned him earlier, Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, okay, about whistleblowers.
I did, but you know what? I'd like to, I kind of covered that. I have a surprise story that I thought was really cool. Let's cover this. So in Popular Mechanics, there's a mysterious light that has been blinking in space for every 21 minutes for the past 35 years. And scientists have discovered a mysterious pulsing light, and they don't know what it could be. It pulses at a rate at about once every 21 minutes and has been doing so since at least 1988. And it doesn't nicely fit into the description of the pulsating space objects we know of, such as pulsars and things like that. So researchers are still trying to figure out what this object might be. Could it be some kind of communication? Could it be some kind of astral mystery that we haven't yet seen? So some things in the universe shine with a constant life-sustaining light, and some things beam with a light from other sources, and some flash in large explosions, never to be seen again. And some pulse like a ticking, or rather flashing, or just like a clock. Some energy sources in the universe hit us with a beam of light and a beam of photons, lighting up and darkening on a very set schedule. Well, there's actually a fair few types of these objects that do this, but scientists recently discovered one particular source of flashing light that has already proven especially puzzling. And so, as I described, it's now called the GPM J1839-10, and we don't know what it is. Usually, if you spot a pulsing light or a pulsing object, your first instinct would be to identify it as a pulsar. But this one is not one of these rotating neutron stars with strong magnetic fields that generate radio jets at the magnetic poles. If their poles aren't pointed directly at Earth, we only see those radio jets when they spin around it to hit us, causing an incredibly consistent pulse. Well, this isn't one of those. And in addition to that, we have no idea what it is. And so scientists are considering all kinds of new options. They think, could it be a new thing or a very rare magnetized white dwarf? It's a pretty, that's a long shot. They're also considering that it could just be an optical illusion or some kind of X-ray. But right now, researchers aren't fully ready to give up on any of these ideas, no matter how long the shot may be. But further investigations will likely be needed to determine what exactly this thing is. But it's kind of nice to know there's something out there with a big question mark on it, and it could be some kind of communication. And who knows, Dave? It could have a signal or some kind of message from someone or some people from far, far away.
Very much so. Very much so. And you know what? SETI from NASA still will say they've never found it.
You're not a fan. You're not a fan.
No.
I get it.
No, I'm not a fan of SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Yeah, right. Right. Show us where it is, my man. Show us where it is. And I tell you, it'll be definitely much different than what we think actually went on. But you know what? I would be very excited for that. I really would. And you never know. It could be something that's lighting up from millions of years ago that's finally reaching us, or it could be a more powerful wow signal. The wow signal being an audio signal that was heard in space back 30 plus years ago. Geez, I guess almost 40 years ago now.
Yeah.
And it could be something that like that, except more powerful with light. I mean, what if there's another humanoid type civilization out there that has shot this particle beam of light into space, seeing who picks it up? Or maybe they've been invaded by aliens of the nefarious, malevolent kind, and that's their rescue signal, like their bat signal. Maybe they're calling for random guy. I don't know.
They miss him too.
They miss him too. Yeah, you never know. But Tim, I love that story, and that's a story we need to follow up on. Where is this coming from? We know it's going to be downplayed, even if it was extraterrestrial. I doubt it comes out. But that's one of those stories that, it's going to come and go. And in 6 months, it's going to be forgotten about until Avi Loeb Part 2 says it's alien. You never know.
We gotta follow it.
Boy, I'm saying, little Timmy Senor, thank you so much for another great UFO report as we are on the outskirts of tonight's show. It's been great, man. What a great week to have you back and back in costume and looking pretty like Howie Mandel. The only problem is you don't have an ice cap in your hands, but it's been good, buddy. Thank you for a great show.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun. See you guys
thank
soon.
you to Paul Blake Smith, our guest. We're going to bring him back next month to talk about Eisenhower and aliens. It's going to be an absolute blast. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAP, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. I know you're out there somewhere. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SUR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we're watching. We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we got room for them too. Good night. And it's at this time of night where we want to say hello to all the agents and agencies out there, like our good friend Ross Dog's Broken Spirit, and say, hey, give us a call sometime. You already got the number. We are in support. You know how to get a hold of us. Just ring that phone like a telephone. Some of us can be bought. There you go. Our good friend Ross Dog. He's been away for a while. We own the Nightman. Electric Cuttlefish, how you doing? Good to have you here. God, it's only Wednesday. I thought it was like Thursday today. All right. Are we downloading this yet? There we go. Pineapple. All right, let's close that out. Close that out. Close that out. And let's start editing. Right there. Who's on tomorrow night while I'm looking here? Tomorrow night, Mike Ricksecker joins us. He's got a brand new book out about time travel. Yeah. It's going to be fun tomorrow night, too. I like Mike. He's a great, smart dude. $405er, what's happening? Yes, but 405er Survivor 2.0. If I am bought, then I have money in my bank account. There you go. NSA. NSA. Oh, we're talking about my Bass Pro Shops right there. Nice and cool out. Is the NSA watching? Gee, I don't know. Ask the guy on our screen. Hey, little Robbie or sweet Robbie G. Yeah, we always have Grant Cameron on. Grant's not doing any interviews right now. I got to give him a call here this week, so I'll see how he's doing, checking things out. Yeah, I try and bring Grant on every couple of months. Um, Grant has not had the best of health lately, but he's dealing with some other stuff right now, non-UFO related. We can talk about that, RG. It's amazing how quick his photo went down off that website. Or apparently now he's tied allegedly to a company with Gary Nolan. Oh, very cool. Very cool, unknown. How you doing, by the way? Who's Rib? Oh, Rob. Oh, a little bit of exciting news around here. My ghost tours that I do at the local museum, we've sort of patched things up with the new people involved. And we're going to be restarting our ghost tours, not this weekend coming up, but the following weekend. I'm pretty excited about that. Thank you, Nikki. All right, that's done. Close that off. Anybody hear the Canadian news that Justin Trudeau and his wife Sophie have split up after 18 years of marriage? Yeah, we can't use the P word in the chat room, Bomber. That can get me in trouble. I got to erase that comment. Good times. Tomorrow night on the show, Mike Ricksecker comes in to talk a little bit of time travel. I want to say a big thank you to RG times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. W Decker times 3. Cat Chaser, Brad, Derek, Pam H, Vash the Impaler, Baba, Debster, Larry, and Izzy Stradlin. If you're new, don't forget to hit subscribe and ring that bell. Hi, Dry Toast, the best name in YouTube. And we'll see you all tomorrow night, everyone. Take care.